Hey guys. This is part 6 of What If Naruto Was in RWBY. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 29. The destruction of a local mall, a whole section of Vale's highway system shut down for repairs, infiltrating the meeting of a well-known terrorist group, and to top it off, the total dismantling of an Elysian prototype weapon. Ashman read off casually. The various members of teams RWBY and NNPR could do nothing but look increasingly sheepish. Well, most of them did. Nora sat there with a huge grin on her face, not at all bothered by the mass amounts of destruction she had played a part in. If anything, she looked quite pleased with herself. Meanwhile, Glinda was doing her very best to not let loose on her students and give them an earful, one she felt they more than deserved. Peering over his glasses, Ashman took the time to examine each of the 8 teens sat in his office. Finally his gaze landed on the whiskered captain of Team NNPR. Naruto did not shy away from the headmaster's gaze, matching the older man's stare, not out of defiance, but as a show of his convictions. While he wasn't exactly happy about all the collateral damage, Naruto knew very well that it could have been much worse. More to the point though, thanks to their actions they had learned some incredibly crucial information, intel that could very well be the difference between life and death. For a moment, either of the two moved, a silent conversation of sorts taking place. Without tearing his gaze away from that of the younger teens, Ashman spoke. Glinda, please take the members of teams RWBY and NNPR back to their rooms. Naruto, stay, I wish to speak with you. What? Came the shocked cries. Although she wasn't happy about it, and just as surprised as her students, Glinda listened to the headmaster and managed to corral the other teens with her into the elevator despite their arguments. When the doors of the elevator closed, Ashman finally tore his gaze away from Naruto's, turning his chair so it faced the bright sun of a new day. So you believe war is coming? I know it is. This isn't some way for the white fan to show a little muscle. They intend to wage a full-scale war on Vale, and Roman Torchwick has supplied them with enough dust and weapons to do it. Naruto answered with a frown. Years of peace coming to an end due to the poor treatment of a people who have no choice in what traits they are born with. It is not something I wish to ever see. Ashman intoned, a hint of shame and sadness coloring his voice. Fear leads to hate. Hate leads to pain and death. Pain sparks the fires of revenge, which only leads to more hate and death, continuing the cycle. Naruto bit out, recalling the vicious cycle of death and hatred that had consumed the shinobi era since its birth with Indra and Ashura. Ashman only seemed marginally surprised by the words of wisdom before recollecting his thoughts. Naruto Uzumaki. I have a very important mission for you. The blonde Jinchuriki quirked an eyebrow. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. The wind gently whistled through the leaves and grass, carrying with it a cool breeze. Inhale. Exhale. A squirrel busied itself by attempting to make its treetop home even more comfortable while searching for any food that was readily available. Inhale. Exhale. Meanwhile, on an entirely different tree, a bird sang a sweet melody, calling out to any who would listen. Inhale. Exhale. Naruto's heart thrummed, slowly and purposefully to the beat of the life around him, his senses stretched far beyond that of what most normal people could accomplish. However, this was as easy a task as walking to the blonde after having studied under the toads of empty Maiboku. But this was not a meditative exercise meant to help his sage training. No, it was for something else entirely. Without so much as a twitch or hitch in his breathing, the blazing orange shroud of his biju cloak sprang to life, writhing and swaying like a living fire, though it lacked its usual ferocity. Like a snake slithering along a tree, a single tail bubbled into existence, performing a slow hypnotic dance to an unheard rhythm. Following it was another tail, seamlessly syncing itself to the rhythm of the other chakra limb. Soon after a third tail followed, the energy shroud turning a darker shade of orange at the same time. Inhale. Exhale. A fourth tail sprang to life. Inhale. A fifth followed it. Exhale. Then a sixth. It was at this point that a slight frown appeared on Naruto's face. The fourth tail of Kurama's chakra was usually around the point that he was consumed by the rage and instincts of his Biju's chakra. Even after improving his relationship with Kurama and the Biju stating that the acidic qualities of his chakra should no longer be a problem after becoming whole once more. The memories of what he had done while under the influence of the chakra were hard to shake off. Had Jiraiya not been an extremely powerful ninja and seal master, he wouldn't have gotten away with a few scars on his chest. Sakura could very well have been fatally maimed had it not been for Yamato-sensei and his Mokuton would release jutsu. Still, this whole exercise was to prevent any of that from being a problem anymore. This was to grow even stronger so that, come whatever may, he was ready and able to protect those close to him. That wasn't to say that he didn't think they couldn't defend themselves. Far from it. Team RWBY and his own teammates had proved time and again that they could hold their own extremely well. However, they were no longer dealing with just Grim and some thugs. Even if Kaguya herself was no longer around, whatever echoes of her and her plans that still lingered would no doubt be far beyond what was normal, even for him and his friends. So, with a frown of concentration, Naruto pushed himself. For a moment, nothing seemed to change. There was no explosion of power or anything. Not even so much as a shift in the wind or a change in the still swaying chakra cloak. Inhale. The cloak flickered, parts of it shifting and changing in small, almost imperceptible ways. The most noticeable change was its color. Instead of a burning shade of orange, it began to glow in hues of gold. Exhale. Ugh! We're not even halfway through the semester, and I'm already over all these classes. Yang complained, throwing herself into a nearby chair. Pyrrha giggled at the blonde. Unfortunately, we all can't make clones and send them to class like Naruto does. He's been playing hooky. Without us, Yang exclaimed. Considering he learns everything his clones do, I don't think it can technically be considered hooky. Ren commented offhandedly. Blake, ever the curious one, asked. Any reason he's been doing it? Pyrrha shrugged. He said that he and Kurama were training. Isn't he already super strong? Ruby asked aloud. Naruto isn't someone who is satisfied with good enough. We've seen his training regimen and he pushes himself to the point of exhaustion most times. Ren remarked with a tint of admiration to his voice. Despite his childish tendencies, Naruto took his responsibilities as team captain very seriously and did all he could to improve, which was something Ren could admire. Nora nodded and spoke around the mouthful of food in her mouth. Yeah, he even beat me in a push-up contest. Hopefully he isn't pushing himself too far. Blake commented, a hint of concern coloring her voice. After the last time, Whiskers knows better. Yang grinned, putting a fist to her open palm. Ruby recalled how terrified the older teen had been of her sister and Pyrrha after that whole episode and giggled to herself. Well, I'm just glad that with the dance coming up soon, we'll all have some time to relax after everything that's happened this past year. Weiss added. Oh yeah. Isn't Team CFVY in charge of it this year? Yang added. In charge of what? A familiar voice interrupted. Smiling, Pyrrha happily made room for Naruto as he slid into the seat next to her and answered. Coco and her team are in charge of setting up this year's dance. Naruto quirked a brow. Dance? What dance? The one that's happening in a few weeks. Weiss quipped sarcastically. Naruto could only blankly stare at the heiress, still completely lost. What? Did you not have dances during your time? Pyrrha questioned. The whiskered Jinchuriki shrugged and joked. Not that I can remember. Was a little more busy with the whole people after the Biju anything. The other's sweat dropped. Fair point. Situating herself next to her fellow blonde, Yang cheekily grinned. Well, Whiskers, let me educate you on what all the hubbub is about. Maybe we should let someone else do that. Blake commented, her voice carrying a slightly worried tone to it. Wrapping an arm around Team NPR's captain, Yang teased. What? It's not like I dare corrupt Whiskers or anything. Sorry, Yang, Ero-Senin already beat you to that, Naruto mentally lamented. Kurama snickered, recalling that particular incident. Prior to their coming to Remnant, it was probably the only time that the Biju had happily lent out his chakra to his host. I think I can handle it. Pyrrha spoke up, a light blush dusting her cheeks. However, Naruto didn't hear his friend's declaration, instead distracted by something he had seen from the corner of his eye. With a frown on his face, the blonde stood up. I'll see you guys later. I have something I have to do. Without a word more, the Jinchuriki was racing out of the lunch hall, leaving behind some very confused and worried teens. My, sneaking up on a helpless maiden? How bold of you. Naruto snarled. Cut the crap, Cinder. The amber-eyed woman smirked and turned to address the blonde standing just behind her. Why so hostile? Because I know what you have planned and I'll be damned if I just sit back and watch it all go to hell. The blonde bit out, blue orbs glaring into amber ones. Cinder didn't seem at all put out by his declaration. If anything, she seemed almost happy. The raven-haired seductress moved to stand inches away from Naruto, looking up into his ever-expressive eyes filled with equal parts anger and confusion. "Oh Naruto, I've told you what my plans are, why I'm doing all of this." This only served to infuriate Naruto even more. "Don't you dare lie to me. You told me you wanted peace, that you wanted to expose the dark secrets being kept from everyone. What I saw was you gearing up for a war. And that is still my plan, but this is only to ensure that it succeeds." Suddenly, an uncharacteristically serious look crossed Cinder's face. "Do you think those who hold all of the power will just let it go quietly? No, they will fight tooth and nail to keep their game of chess a secret. I may be getting ready for a war, but I won't be the one who starts it." Naruto clenched his fists. He had come prepared to confront Cinder, and hopefully come to a solid conclusion on how to proceed with his dealings with her. Instead, he found himself just as unsure as he'd been previously, if not more so. The blonde grit his teeth in frustration. Mind games and subterfuge were just not his strong suit. "I promise you, Naruto, you'll soon see my plans come to fruition." With that as her final words, Cinder sauntered away, a confident smirk on her face, leaving a frustrated Naruto behind. "Any advice, Kurama?" Naruto mentally exhaled. "Continue to prepare for the worst. We both know she's up to something more here. We just don't know exactly what it is, and until we do, discretion will be the smarter plan," the ancient chakra mass answered. "I hate just waiting around for stuff to happen though. It's so boring." Naruto moaned, folding his hands behind his head. The Biju rolled its eyes. "Yeah, well, go complain to someone who cares. I'm going back to sleep." "Lazy furball," Naruto groused. Blake winced, feeling her entire body scream in agony with every move she made. Despite the pain though, she bore a determined grimace, her amber eyes glaring straight ahead at her sparring partner. With a grunt of pain, she stood to her feet and aimed the twin blades of Gamble Shroud at Naruto. Again! Seeing the raven-haired teen's breath coming in ragged gasps and the obvious pain she was in, the blonde frowned. "Blake, I think we're done for today." "No! I know you can keep going and dash, Blake!" Crossing the clearing to stand before the barely standing Faunus, Naruto took both parts of Gamble's Shroud despite Blake's weak protests. "I know why you're doing this, but driving yourself into the ground isn't the right way to go about this." Slightly bitter, Blake glared at the blonde. "But it's okay for you to do it?" The whiskered teen frowned before turning around and stepping away from her. Realizing just how harsh that had come out, Blake made to apologize only to have her breath catch in her throat as the fiery cloak of Kurama's chakra blanketed Naruto's form. Expecting to feel the usual suffocating pressure of malice and hatred, Blake was shocked when she instead felt warm. She was also feeling extremely relaxed, so much so that she was honestly having to fight down the urge to purr. She was further surprised when two more tails of chakra sprung from Naruto's backside. Watching the three chakra limbs sway, slightly mesmerized by their hypnotic dance, Blake's eyes widened when they converged to form a cone of sorts. At the point where they all joined, a small, extremely condensed ball of chakra began to form. What she saw next had her jaw on the floor. Naruto grabbed the ball of chakra and swallowed it whole. Silence engulfed the clearing for a moment, the world seemingly just as surprised as Blake was by what had just happened. Looking unnaturally calm considering what he just did, the Uzumaki Jinchuriki proceeded to open his mouth wide. The former White Fan member was then nearly thrown onto her ass when a gargantuan beam of pure chakra was shot from Naruto's open maw. The surrounding area was practically laid to waste from the backlash of the attack alone, the ground around Naruto collapsing in on itself under the pressure while the air began to sizzle from the heat of it. Even the sky itself was seemingly parted by the technique, a vast swath of clouds being vaporized by the beam. Letting the attack peter out, Naruto turned around, looking just as relaxed and energized as he usually did. "That was barely a drop in my reserves," the blonde stated, the Biju cloak receding. "Why?" Blake asked simply, still reeling from the display of raw power she had just seen. Naruto answered calmly. "To prove a point. Like I've told you before, the Uzumaki clan was known for our insane stamina and huge chakra reserves. Plus I have Kurama's chakra to draw on. I can train myself into the ground because my body can, and will just heal from it, and keep me going after a nap. You can't say the same. But we can't just sit around doing nothing. We both saw what the White Fan are planning. The others don't realize it, but we both know better," Blake exclaimed, a frenzied look in her eyes. Looking down, the raven-haired teen clenched her fists. They don't know what it's like out there, what it's like to have blood on your hands. Naruto engulfed Blake's smaller form in a tight hug. You're right, the others don't know what war looks like, what it means to take another's life. Naruto softly intoned. Pulling away enough to see the watering amber eyes of his friend, the blonde continued. But that doesn't mean they're ignorant to it, that they don't know the kind of world we live in. Taking a deep breath, Blake collected herself and began to wipe away the few tears that had slipped. I guess you're right. Grinning smugly, Naruto poked the faunus in the side, earning a yelp of surprise. What was that? Blake rolled her eyes. You were right, and I'll try and take it a little easier. Naruto gave an over-the-top laugh, gloating about his supposed victory. All the while Blake giggled at the blonde's dramatics. Opening her slightly teary eyes, the young teen stared deeply into the bright ocean pools of her friend, someone she honestly cared for deeply. Don't get her wrong, she cared for and even loved her teammates like sisters, but with Naruto, it was a little different. He understood her and her troubles, because he had gone through similar hardships. But he didn't just let her vent her problems, nor did he simply solve her problems for her. He gave her the tools and words she needed to do it herself, to stand on her own 2 feet, and that was something she found invaluable. Amber gazed into Sapphire with no small amount of happiness and gratitude. That had to have been Naruto. But why would he have used such a powerful attack? Pira's mind raced. While the others had attempted to soothe her worries, the redhead just couldn't help but to worry about her blue-eyed partner, which was the reason for her currently racing through the emerald forest. Hearing the sound of familiar laughter caused her to slow her pace and eased her mind. Walking at a much more sedate pace, Pira allowed a smile to cross her face as she saw a familiar shock of blonde hair peeking through the foliage. As she was about to call out to her friend and partner, a much more feminine laugh caused her to pause. Pira's smile dropped slightly when she saw the raven-haired faunus of Team RWBY locked in an embrace with her partner. That foreign feeling of jealousy tugged on her heart, but the invincible girl was quick to bury the proverbial green beast. Then the two began to stare into the other's eyes, the remnants of their laughter still lingering on their features. A pit of dread filled her suddenly, and that ugly green beast was back with a vengeance. Then she saw it. Blake stood on her tiptoes, closed her eyes, and began to lean in. That's all Pira could stand to see. Without another glance back, she was racing back to the dorms. Which one looks better? Weiss near demanded, presenting 2 similarly colored sheets of paper. Naruto scratched his cheek. They both look the same? The Schnee heiress rolled her eyes. Ugh, boys. Turning, she addressed Ruby and posed the same question. Ruby, having been busy cramming cookies into her mouth, looked like a deer caught in the headlights. Weiss huffed. I don't know why I even bother. The 2 team captains shared a look before bursting into laughter. Still chuckling, Naruto turned to look at the small army of his clones being ordered around by both Weiss and Yang as the 2 teens ran around attempting to prepare the hall for the coming dance. Originally their friends in Team CFVY had been the ones in charge of the whole affair. But the older team had yet to return from their latest mission, which had the wheels of the rumor mill turning. Part of Naruto had been slightly worried. But he had seen firsthand just how skilled each member of CFVY was, so those were quickly laid to rest. Then came the satisfaction of him not being the one involved in a mission being bumped up in danger. Felt good to be on the outside looking in. But with the older teens still out, there was no one left to prepare for the big dance, which meant it could very well be cancelled, something Yang and Weiss were vehemently against. As such, the 2 had taken it upon themselves to organize the event. Of course, this also meant that Naruto had been persuaded to help as well. The blonde was quick to shunt that work onto an army of Kage Bunshin though. So, any idea who you're going to ask to the dance? Ruby asked, genuinely curious. While she wasn't the type to get involved in the love lives of her friends or anything, even she could clearly see that her fellow captain had plenty of girls vying for his attention. How he himself failed to realize this was a mystery. Not like Pira, Blake, and Yang hide it well, Ruby giggled to herself. The whiskered teen shrugged. I don't think anyone would be all that interested in going with me. Figured I'd just spend it hanging out with everybody. Really? Not gonna ask Blake or Pira? Ruby sweat dropped, amazed by just how dense Naruto was. The blue-eyed Jinchuriki gave another shrug. Nah, they've both kinda been avoiding me cause of their dates. Now that sparked the younger teen's curiosity. It was clear as day to almost the entirety of Beacon and even some of the visiting students from the other 3 academies that the raven-haired faunus and red-haired invincible girl were infatuated with the spiky-haired captain of Team NPR. Who else could they possibly be going with, and why would they both be avoiding Naruto? That's surprising. Ruby half mumbled to herself. Why? Blake and Pyrrha are great. I'm just surprised it didn't happen sooner. Naruto grinned. The cloak-wearing captain laughed. Leave it to Naruto to be so bluntly honest. Well, I don't have a date either. Why don't we go together? You know, as friends? Ruby offered with a slight blush. As platonic as it was meant to sound, she was still asking a boy on a technical date, even if he was her best friend. Naruto grinned. Sure. Sounds like fun. The shinobi turned huntsman then began to chuckle sheepishly as he rubbed the back of his head. But I don't exactly know what to do at a dance or anything. The silver-eyed huntress to be gave a bright smile. Neither do I. The two shared another laugh. Off to the side, Yang spared the pair a glance and smiled. Weiss did the same, though she gave one of her signature eye rolls. Despite that, a small smile could still be seen on the heiress' face. Chapter 30. Naruto took the time to look himself over in the mirror, scanning the suit he had donned for any imperfections. Sure, he and Ruby weren't going as couple, but Yan had made it very clear that he was to be on his best behavior and show her little sister the time of her life. The blonde teen shivered remembering those frightening red eyes as they bore into his soul, and people thought his Biju cloak's red eyes were scary. Regardless of Yang's advice, he genuinely wanted to make sure Ruby had as much fun as was possible. After all, she was his first real friend at Beacon and was someone he cared for and was proud to call one of his precious people. He'd do almost anything for her. With a grin of determination, the blonde team captain gave himself one last glance over. Black suit all pressed out and spotless? Check. Dark orange tie straightened and tied properly? Done. Mop of blonde spikes he could never control? Well, that was as good as he was getting it, so, check. With that done, he turned to address the only other person with him. Ready to go, Rin? The long-haired teen checked his maroon bow tie one last time before giving a nod. Good to go. The two bumped fists and strode out into the well-lit courtyard, waiting for their respective dates. Looking around at the decorative lights and streamers hanging from the light posts and bushes, Naruto whistled. Yang and Weiss really outdid themselves. Ren nodded. They did an excellent job, though it helped having an army of your clones to order around. The whiskered teen chuckled, recalling some of the memories he had gotten from said worker clones. However, before the two could continue their admiration of Yang and Weiss' decorative skills, their eyes were drawn to the two young women now standing a few feet from them. Ren smiled when he laid eyes on Nora. The outgoing teen had stuck with her usual colors and themes, donning a simple yet elegant pink, strapless dress. The top half was a darker shade of pink and formed into a heart shape, while the lower half was an almost white coloring and ended just above her knees. Her heels clicked on the concrete as she walked up to Rin with a wide grin and grabbed a hold of his arm, already dragging him along. Come on, run! We gotta show everyone our sweet moves! Naruto chuckled at the pair before turning his gaze to his own date for the night. To say he was stunned was an understatement. Dense he may be, but even he knew that Ruby was a very attractive girl. While she was 2 years younger than everyone at Beacon, she didn't exactly look it. In fact, she was just as developed in curves as her teammates, and the dress she was wearing made that all very clear. Like Nora, Ruby's dress was a simple one piece that ended above her knees, but in a much darker red color. The younger teen had also tied a sizable piece of black fabric around her waist. The ends of it dangling off to her made Naruto blush slightly was the split in the dress that revealed a tasteful amount of cleavage, though the split was criss-crossed by black thread. Her upper chest and collar were covered by black mesh that seemed to be a part of the dress. Fiddling with her fingers, Ruby blushed as Naruto gave her a once-over. This was far from being what she would normally wear, but considering tonight was a special night, she figured it was time to try something new. That and Yan had practically begged her to. You look great, Ruby, Naruto admitted with a grin. The younger teen smiled and gained back some of her usual confidence. You clean up pretty good too, Naruto. The two captains shared a laugh before Ruby walked up to Naruto and grabbed his arm. Well, that was the plan. Instead, the scythe wielder stumbled a little, though Naruto was quick to steady her. You okay? The older of the two asked, genuinely concerned. Ruby huffed. It's these stupid clown shoes. Naruto chuckled when he realized that Ruby apparently could not walk in the heels she was wearing. So you can balance yourself on Blake's ribbon using crescent rows, but can't walk in heels? Ruby pouted. I'll show you, mister. With another laugh, the two began the walk to the hall where the dance was being held. Oh my gosh! You two look so adorable together! Yang gushed as Naruto and RWBY walked into the hall, arm in arm. Noticing that her younger sister was actually clutching onto her date, Yang barely stifled a giggle. Having some trouble there, Rubes? RWBY glared at her sister. It's your fault I'm wearing these stupid things. Not able to hold it in anymore, Yang scooped her sister into a hug. Oh, but you just look so beautiful. Putting her sputtering sister down, the blonde brawler turned and gave Naruto an approving once-over. And you don't look too bad either, Foxy. Rolling his eyes at his fellow blonde's usual flirting, Naruto replied. You look pretty good yourself, firecracker. And he was being honest. Although Yang's simple all-white dress wasn't as flashy or revealing as her usual clothes, it did nothing but accentuate her natural beauty. RWBY gave the Jinchuriki a playful punch to his shoulder. Hey! You're supposed to be my date, mister! Yang sidled up to the taller blonde and snuggled into his side while giving her sister a conspiratory look. I don't know, sis, I might have to take him for myself. RWBY childishly blew a raspberry at her sister as she began to guide Naruto towards the crowd, the two blondes laughing all the while. As the two made their way through the already dancing crowd, a familiar voice called out. RWBY! Recognizing the voice, RWBY's face was instantly lit up by a bright smile as she turned and ran to hug her friend. Penny! Naruto stood off to the side and smiled as he watched the two interact. Still don't know why Penny seems a little odd, but RWBY likes her, so I guess it's not a big deal. The whiskered Uzumaki was pulled from his thoughts when he sensed someone take up a spot to his side. On bodyguard duty tonight too? Chuckling, Naruto shook his head and sheepishly admitted. No, RWBY's actually my date. John was somewhat surprised. Really? I thought you and Pira were dating or something? Leveling a flat stare at his fellow blonde, Naruto replied. We told you we weren't back on that mission. The Atlesian chuckled nervously. Right. The group of four were interrupted when Nora blazed past, dragging Ren behind her and demanding him to dance with her. Struck by the idea, Naruto reached out and grabbed RWBY, surprising her. Seeing where she was gently being led, the young team captain began to blush and stutter. Naruto! I don't know how to dance, said Blonde, only looked back and grinned. It's fine, just trust me. Settling themselves near a slowly swaying Nora and Ren, Naruto placed his hands on RWBY's waist while the black and red-haired teen unsurely wrapped her arms around her date's neck. To RWBY's surprise, Naruto began to lead her in a slow two-step dance, subtly holding her up and making sure she didn't make an absolute fool of herself. After a few minutes of accidentally stepping on his feet, the two captains settled into a steady rhythm. Genuinely enjoying herself, RWBY curiously looked up at her date and asked, I thought you hadn't been to a dance before? Naruto chuckled. When I went on a 3-year training trip with Ero-Sennin, he tried to turn me into a super pervert like him. Of course I didn't want to end up like him, or my other teachers, so I refused any and all of his attempts. He eventually gave up, but insisted I at least know how to show a woman a good time. Dancing was one of the things he taught me. Was he really that much of a pervert? RWBY giggled. Naruto gave her a flat stare. He was known more for Ika than his ninja career. Really? RWBY squeaked. Chuckling, Naruto shook his head. No, but it was close. Her job done as the receptionist, Yang smiled as she looked around at all the people laughing and smiling, students and teachers alike. Turning to her side, Yang wrapped an arm around her teammate. You know, we did a pretty damn good job, didn't we, Weiss? The Schnee heiress took in the sight of students from the 4 academies all mingling and genuinely enjoying themselves before nodding with a small smile. We really did. Spotting Naruto and RWBY sitting at a table with Ren and Nora, the blonde brawler grabbed the Schnee heiress and began to drag her to the table despite her protests. Come on! Let's go enjoy ourselves! Naruto nearly spilled his drink when Yang clapped him on the back before taking a seat next to him. Whiskers! Weiss rolled her eyes but seated herself next to RWBY, who cheered. Weiss! Come to join your BFF? No. Your barbarian of a sister dragged me here. The Schnee heiress huffed. Well, that's just rude. Yang pouted. While he was still laughing, Naruto caught sight of a familiar flash of red out of the corner of his eye. Not having seen his red-haired partner or really spent any meaningful amount of time with her recently, he was quick to excuse himself. I think I saw Pira, I'll be right back. At the mention of the emerald-eyed warrior, Yang thought aloud. I'm honestly surprised those two didn't come together. Realizing what she said, Yang was quick to turn to her sister and apologize. No offense to you, Rubes. The younger teen simply shrugged. While she was extremely happy that she had come to the dance as Naruto's date, RWBY also knew that there was no romantic feelings between them, and she was okay with that. Wasn't to say she didn't find the older blonde attractive or anything, but he was just more like the older brother she had never had. Thinking about it, RWBY giggled as she realized that Naruto could very well pass as her legitimate brother considering just how much he had in common with both her father and sister. She had no doubt that both her father and uncle would love the goofball if they ever met. Meanwhile, Weiss threw her own 2 cents into the conversation. If he hadn't come with Pyrrha, I would have thought he would at least come with Blake. RWBY was the one to shed some light on the situation. Naruto said that they had both been avoiding him the last few days, so he thought it was because they had gotten their own dates. Everyone at the table face-palmed. Idiot! The group of friends unanimously muttered. Gazing at the star-filled sky above, Pyrrha gave a heavy sigh, her mind and heart lost in an ocean of turmoil. Can't say I blame you for wanting some fresh air. So lost in her thoughts, the redhead couldn't help but jump in surprise at the sudden noise. Turning to see a familiar whiskered face, one she had gone out of her way to avoid these last few days, Pyrrha offered a small smile, though it lacked any sort of real warmth. Oh yes, it was getting kind of stuffy in there. Spotting the strained smile a mile away, Naruto frowned before moving to join his partner at stargazing. Someone bothering you? Pyrrha's heart fluttered seeing the threatening look on her captain's face. It was a reminder of just how much he genuinely cared for her, and showed that he was ready to squash anything that so much as bothered her. Still, recalling what she had seen that night in the forest, she was quick to clamp down on those feelings. No one is bothering me. Grinning ferally, Naruto crossed his arms. Well, your date better be treating you right or he'll have to deal with me, Nora, and Rin. Try as she might, the emerald-eyed teen couldn't resist giggling at the cheesy bravado her friend was putting on. Collecting herself, Pyrrha shook her head. Well, that won't be a problem, because I don't have a date. All of Naruto's joking vanished as he was left dumbfounded by Pyrrha's confession. What do you mean? How do you not have a date? Simple, no one asked me. Pyrrha answered with a sad smile. There's no way someone didn't ask you. I've seen the fan mail, plenty of people would sell a limb to even get you to smile at them. Naruto insisted. Recalling some of her more enthusiastic fans and their letters, Pyrrha agreed. True, but even still, no one actually had the courage to approach me. They never really do. And even if they had, I would have turned them down. Because they're not asking you, Pyrrha, they're asking the invincible girl. Naruto added with a solemn look, remembering just how much his partner disliked the pedestal she had been placed on. Pyrrha gave a beatific smile to the blonde. I've told you before, but Naruto, you really are one of the first and only people who I've felt so comfortable around. Ever since we were first partnered back during our initiation, you never once treated me like I was better than you, that I was above you. You treated me like I was just me. Smiling by now, Naruto was ready to interject, but Pyrrha continued, the dam holding back her feelings having sprung a leak. You're always encouraging me to better myself, you're there when I need you to be, you never judge me, or ask me to be anyone but who I really am. There hasn't been a moment since we've met that I don't cherish in some way. Even small talks about classes and homework mean so much more if it's with you. Placing his hands on a near-frantic Pyrrha's shoulders, Naruto smiled as the redhead started to collect herself. Sorry, I shouldn't have said all of that. Your date would probably be upset. Why would RWBY be upset? Naruto asked, completely lost. Pyrrha blinked. RWBY? You're not here with Blake? The blonde half Uzumaki raised a brow, now extremely confused. No. Why would I be? Aren't you and Blake dating now? Pyrrha asked, just as confused as her partner. Naruto blushed. What? No. Why would you think that? I saw her kiss you that day you two were training in the forest together. Pyrrha stuttered out, now highly confused. Had she seen some kind of illusion? Or had Naruto rejected the cat fauna's feelings? Blake. Yang cheered, elated to see her raven-haired partner walking up to join them. About time you joined us. Blake rolled her eyes and took a seat with the rest of her team and some of the people they had befriended. Taking a brief glance at around the table, the amber-eyed youth smiled as she saw all of her friends enjoying themselves and relaxing. RWBY was animatedly chatting with an equally enthusiastic Penny, Nora was trying to convince Rin to do something with her, and Weiss was surprisingly having a nice chat with John of all people. Well, I figured I'd either come by choice or you and Naruto would probably hunt me down and drag me here. Blake quipped, Yang just grinned. Ah, you know us so well. Blake. Ruby cheered, taking notice of the last member of her team having joined them. Can I ask you a question? Quirking a delicate brow, Blake shrugged. Sure. With her usual innocence, the young captain asked. How come you've been avoiding Naruto? It took a moment for the question to fully register in her brain, and when it did, the teen faunus was quick to blush and avoid any and all eye contact. I have no idea what you're talking about. Yang couldn't help herself and teased. Another failed attempt to flirt with Foxy? Told you, you're gonna have to just walk up to him and give him a good one right on the lips. Blake's cheeks turned an even darker shade of red as she mumbled to herself. At this point, everyone at their table was completely invested in the conversation and was pointedly staring at the faunus. Come again? They all asked, mumbling just loud enough to be heard over the music. Blake admitted. I tried. Everyone at the table was blown away by the normally introverted book lover's admission. Wide-eyed, Yang grabbed her friend's hands in her own and nearly yelled. What do you mean you tried? Growing increasingly embarrassed with all the attention, Blake smacked Yang's hands away and huffed. The day he was helping me train in the forest. Naruto set me straight and helped me sort some stuff out. We ended up hugging and, well, I couldn't help myself and went in for a kiss. But I tripped. Silence. Had it not been for the pulsing bass of the music and the sounds of the other attendees enjoying themselves, you could have very well heard a pin drop. As far as Team RWBY and their friends were concerned, though, the rest of the hall had faded into non-existence. Weiss, completely dumbfounded, managed to ask the one question everyone was attempting to get out. What? Her brow drooping, Blake confessed. I heard someone coming, got surprised, and ended up tripping. After that, I couldn't face Naruto. Her explanation was met with equal amounts of barely repressed giggling and sympathy. Pira blinked in disbelief. So, Blake tripped, and then ran away? Naruto shrugged his shoulders. Yup. Was really weird, honestly. The absurdity of the situation finally sinking in, Pira couldn't help herself, her whole body shaking as she laughed, not at all understanding why his partner was suddenly laughing so hard that her eyes were actually starting to water. Naruto could only chuckle unsurely. You okay there, Pira? Wiping away the tears, the red-haired beauty nodded. Sorry, it's just I was being extremely silly these last few days and worrying about nothing. I'm so sorry for avoiding you for no real reason. Not one to hold a grudge, the whiskered teen shrugged before holding his hand out and smiling. Well, I think you can make it up to me with a dance. Pira gave a bright smile as she slipped her own hand into her captain's. I would love to. Naruto blushed as he finally took the time to take in the sight of Pira against the dim glow of the night, dressed in a form-fitting red gown that matched her hair perfectly while contrasting with her alabaster skin, a light hint of her usual eyeshadow to accentuate her deep emerald green orbs, and her crimson tresses flowing in cascading waves down her back and around her face. Pira was absolutely stunning. You look gorgeous. Naruto breathed out without even realizing it. Pira colored prettily at the compliment. Shined by Jeff and Casey Williams walking arm in arm, the pair caught the eye of almost the entirety of the hall as they walked onto the dance floor, matching the slow groove and melodious female vocals of the music almost perfectly, ignoring everyone and everything around them. The two began to sway to the soothing call of the vocals accompanied by the soft piano chords. Lost in the other's eyes, the pair found themselves in their own little world. As the beat began to build, the rest of the students followed suit and began to dance with their own dates, flooding the dance floor once more. Suddenly, an electronic drum fill kicked the song into full swing. In a surprising move, Naruto grinned as he twirled Pira around, the bottom part of her dress flaring out in a shock of red. The emerald-eyed teen laughed as she and the blonde abandoned their slow two-step and began to move in sync with the now pulsing beat of the song. Since when could you dance like this? Pira managed to say over the roar of music and sounds of joy. Naruto chuckled. You pick up some weird things when you spend 2 years with an old pervert. Elsewhere, Nora couldn't contain herself anymore. This is happening. As Rin was about to ask his eccentric friend what she meant, he got his answer when he was pulled to his feet and dragged onto the dance floor, joining their smiling teammates. There's no way we're missing this, Yang shouted, grabbing both Blake and Ruby by the hand and dragging them along. Unprepared and caught off guard by her sister's actions, Ruby, in a panic, grabbed the closest thing to her. Unfortunately for Weiss, she just so happened to be sitting next to her partner and was thusly dragged along with the rest of her team. Penny and John shared a look before shrugging, deciding to join the two teams. Pira and Naruto were forced out of their own little world when they realized that all of their friends had joined them, smiles plastered across all of their faces, even Weiss, forming a sort of loose circle. The group of friends was all laughs and smiles as they danced like fools, trading partners at random times. Even still, it was hard to miss the way Naruto and Pira gravitated towards each other. As the song crescendoed into its final movement, the pair found each other again, once more lost in their own world. Taking the time to really listen to the lyrics, Pira couldn't help but laugh at how perfect the song matched her own thoughts and feelings for a certain whiskered captain. As the song came to a resounding and rhythmic end, the entire dance hall exploded into cheers of laughter and happiness. Ignoring the explosion of noise, Sapphire stared into Emerald. Untold amounts of genuine happiness and love conveyed in a way that could never be properly put into words. A bond built from mutual respect, unconditional trust, and a belief in the other. Pira and Naruto. While earlier the dam holding back her feelings had sprung a leak, that same dam had now collapsed in a rush of emotions. No longer able to hold herself back, Pira placed her hands on whiskered cheeks, closed her eyes, and threw caution to the wind. Gasps echoed throughout the now deathly quiet hall. The feeling of a soft and luscious pair of lips gently, yet firmly, placed on his took Naruto by complete surprise, his eyes wide and his mind shutting down. However, as his mind caught up to the moment and took in all that was happening, a single moment of clarity struck the Jinchuriki, the pieces all falling into place. Kami, I'm a moron. Without another thought, Naruto wrapped his arms around Pira's waist and pulled her closer, losing himself in the moment. After a few seconds of enjoying the other's touch, the pair separated, emotion clear in their eyes. The moment was broken when the previously silent crowd erupted into thunderous amounts of cheering. About damn time you two! Yan exclaimed, wrapping an arm around the olishly blinking couple. We were almost ready to lock you in a closet until you guys actually confessed. Yeah, and I would have won our betting pool too if we did, Weiss grumbled, handing over a fair bit of lean to Yan, who was wearing a Cheshire grin. Darn it! Thought it would have been sooner, Nora complained as she also forked over some money. You guys were betting on us, Naruto and Pira exclaimed. It was just a fun game of guessing between friends, Ren explained in his usual calm demeanor. However, any sort of levity that his answer may have had was completely shattered when Yang took a portion of her apparent winnings and split them with the long-haired teen. Run! Oh ho! My congratulations to you two young lovebirds! Came the boisterous call of Professor Port. Yes! Truly a wonderful way to celebrate this evening, Dr. Oblek added. Naruto and Pira's jaws dropped when Yang took a portion of the money and passed it to the two teachers. Was everyone in on this? Naruto cried out in exasperation. Those who had been a part of the When are Naruto and Pira finally going to confess? Betting pool began to look in random directions, some attempting to whistle innocently. Unfortunately, seeing as how most of Beacon's faculty and student body had partook in the betting, it only made the situation that much worse. You're all getting pranked for this, Naruto huffed. Well, that was interesting, Mercury scoffed. Raising a delicate brow as she adjusted one of her gloves, Cinder asked. Oh? What was? Arms crossed and hiding the fact that he was talking to his boss through a hidden headset, the silver-haired youth grinned. Blondie and Ms. Invincible swapped saliva in front of everyone. Rising from her crouched position atop a roof, the amber-eyed seductress set her sights on her target. You're right, that is interesting, though not unexpected. We'll deal with that later though. How much time do I have? You should try and be home by midnight. Cinder smirked. I'll keep an eye on the clock. With an almost unnatural elegance, the raven-haired woman began to make her way across the rooftops, careful not to make a sound. Although she was having the time of her life with her friends, RWBY felt the need to step outside for some much-needed air, all the dancing having caused her to work up a bit of a sweat. Taking in the crisp night air with a small smile, the young teen quirked an eyebrow when she caught sight of something moving across the rooftops at a surprisingly quick pace. Unable to contain her curiosity, RWBY went to investigate. Gathering her courage, Blake strode up to a laughing Naruto and tapped him on the shoulder, quietly asking, Do you mind if we dance? Naruto grinned. I'd be happy to. Matches, Acoustic, by Aaron Richards and Brett Paddock. As the first few soft piano notes were played, Blake wrapped her arms around Naruto's neck, Naruto putting his own hands on the raven-haired teen's waist. Without any words said, the two began to smoothly sway in place, slowly gliding across the dance floor and staring into the other's eyes. By the time the mellow vocals joined the piano, the two had been joined by several others on the dance floor, moving in much the same manner, subconsciously moving to the pace of the song. Blake stared searchingly into Naruto's sapphire orbs, looking for something, a hint or a clue that could help put the hurricane that was her heart at ease. She needed something to tell her to either keep pursuing the blonde or to concede to Pyrrha after their display of affection. Completely unaware of his current dance partner's plight, his mind on other things, the blonde Uzumaki was content enough to enjoy the moment, and stared into Blake's eyes with all his usual warmth. While she was focused on her search for answers, Blake couldn't help but listen to the deeply emotional lyrics that were being sung. Both the words themselves as well the melody of them struck a chord in the teen fondness. Internalizing the lyrics and sorting through the storm of her emotions, Blake was struck by something as both the piano and vocals began to grow in volume and passion. Looking into Naruto's blue orbs, she realized that she was too late. While he clearly cared deeply for her, someone had done what she had failed to do. In one heartfelt and completely revealing moment, Pyrrha had thrown Naruto into the sea of her heart, and he hadn't drowned. No, he had embraced the gesture and returned it. While she had seen the two kiss, and it had been obvious, even from afar, just how much pure emotion had been in the otherwise simple kiss, only now, as she looked into the Jinchuriki's eyes, did Blake see just how much the two had shared in that brief moment. A feeling of jealousy began to roil in her. However, as she continued to look into Naruto's expressive eyes, she quickly came to another realization. Sure, Pyrrha had done what she had tried to and happily taken the blonde's heart into her hands, but that didn't mean the redhead was completely taking the goofy ball of sunshine from anyone. It didn't mean that Naruto suddenly cared any less for her or that he cared any more for his partner, now girlfriend. So, while Pyrrha now had a very special place in the blonde's big heart, Blake still had her own as well. It hurt to know that Pyrrha would get to enjoy all of the romantic gestures she longed to. Frankly, it stung quite a bit. But that didn't mean that her late-night talks with blue-eyed teen would stop. It didn't mean that they would no longer be able to sit and enjoy a nice cup of tea every once in a while. It was those thoughts that eased the hurt. Her heartache somewhat soothed and content to enjoy the moment, Blake closed her eyes and leaned into the taller blonde, resting her head on his chest and letting the thrum of his heartbeat lull her. Shifting his hold to embrace her, Naruto smiled and closed his own eyes, happy to share the dance with someone so dear to him. As the song softly came to a close, the two separated. Sharing one last hug, Blake gave a somewhat strained smile and gestured to a waiting Pyrrha. Probably shouldn't keep your girlfriend waiting. Naruto blushed but nodded, making his way over to the redhead. Blake jumped a little when she felt an arm wrap around her. Glancing out of her peripherals and seeing a familiar mane of blonde waves, the cat fauness leaned into the embrace. You gonna be okay? Yang asked in concern. Looking on as Naruto and Pyrrha shared another short kiss, Blake sighed. Eventually. Don't want to go by Nigel Goodfoot go Periscope. As the DJ changed the mood of the dance floor by throwing on an upbeat and light-hearted track, Yang grinned and tugged Blake with her. Come on. Nothing a good dance party couldn't help. With the lights flashing and pulsing along to the beat of the song, the dance floor erupted into laughter as students from each of the academies flooded the floor and began to move to the beat, smiles on each face. Many began to laugh even harder as some of Beacon's professors joined in the fray, attempting to dance like their young charges, most failing to do so in a spectacular fashion. Standing off to the side, Ajban smiled as he looked on. This was the reason he did all that he did, to see so many cheerful faces simply enjoying themselves, ignoring things like who came from what kingdom, or if you were a faunus or not. It brought an immense warmth to his heart to see so much happiness being shared. The silver-haired headmaster was torn from his thoughts when a familiar voice spoke up. Well, I think I've had enough fun for one night. Taking a sip from his cup, Ajban asked. Not going to enjoy the rest of this? James Ironwood smirked but shook his head. No, I think Professors Port and Panathenia are having enough fun for the rest of us. Chuckling as he too watched as the husky professor attempted to do some popular dance move or another, the bespectacled headmaster nodded. Yes, well, I hope your dance with Glinda went well. Have a good night, James. Shaking his head at the enigmatic headmaster's antics, the Atlesian general offered a casual wave. Thank you and have a good rest of the night. Watching the usually gruff general leave the party, Mercury frowned before whispering. A party guest is leaving. Sighing, in exasperation, Cinder continued to tap away at the keyboard, her eyes scanning the screen as she did. Who is it? Mercury's voice came through her earpiece in response. Looks like the general has had enough fun for the night. Should we intervene? Wearing a satisfied smirk, Cinder replied. No. We're done here. That smirk quickly fell off her face though when the nearby elevator gave off a ding signifying that someone had arrived on the floor. Quickly ducking behind a desk, the raven-haired woman couldn't help but roll her eyes as she saw the young captain of Team RWBY wander in, her massive sigh at the ready. Cinder's legs tensed, ready to reveal herself and combat the young teen. Confident that she could easily subdue the younger woman. However, a flash of blonde through her mind's eye brought back an all too recent memory. While she had managed to coerce and trick Naruto into leaving her and her plans alone, if he found out that she had so much as looked at RWBY the wrong way, he would bring down the full might of him and his Biju. Remembering the pure malice that had almost drowned her the day she sparred with Piram months ago was enough to stay her hand. Powerful as she was no match for a Jinchuriki, let alone the jailer of the most powerful of the Biju. At least not yet. Grabbing one of the cartridges clipped to her belt, Cinder tossed it at a random corner. Using her power, she ignited the cartridge, causing an explosion that rocked the room and blasted a hole into both the wall and floor. RWBY, having heard the sound of the cartridge hitting the ground, turned to investigate, but was met with a concussive blast of hot air and rubble. Using the distraction granted to her, Cinder made a quick and silent escape, leaving behind a deeply confused RWBY. A pair of laughs echoed throughout the otherwise silent and chilly night. Not so fast, Naruto! Pira cried out, though her laughs made it clear that she was actually enjoying herself. Naruto, carrying said redhead on his back, only laughed louder. Loving the sound of his partner's melodious laughs, the whiskered teen really began to pour on the speed as he leapt from tree branch to tree branch. After a few minutes of making his way through the forest, Naruto spotted a particularly tall tree. Seeing the perfect opportunity for what he wanted to do, the blonde began to make his way up the large tree using chakra. Reaching one of the topmost branches, Naruto settled both himself and Pira on the outstretched tree limb. Knowing he didn't have to worry about being cold thanks to Kurama, he shrugged off his blazer and draped over the redhead's bare shoulders. Grateful for the gesture, Pira snuggled into the blonde's side, further warming herself up. Wrapping an arm around her, Naruto couldn't help but smile. Here he was amongst the quiet tranquility of a moonlit forest, a beautiful and amazing girl who saw him in a way he was honestly not used to, wrapped in his arms. It was all so new, but in the best of ways. That in mind, Naruto mustered up his courage and moved his arm away. Feeling the loss of comfort, Pira curiously gazed at her captain. Pira? Sensing the unease, the redhead assured the blue-eyed Uzumaki. What's wrong? You know you can tell me anything. Taking a deep breath, Naruto stared straight into Pira's eyes. When I first came to Remnant I was hurt badly. But more than anything, I was angry and depressed that I had failed to protect my home and friends. I came to Beacon hoping I could find some answers and maybe even find a way back home. Eventually figuring out that was pretty much impossible, I was devastated. But then I remembered the great people I had met here, people who actually gave a damn about me. Placing a hand on one of Pira's smooth alabaster cheeks, Naruto cracked a grin. And then there was you. From day one, you were on my side, there when I needed you to knock some sense into me or when I needed a shoulder to lean on. I guess what I'm trying to say is dash. Seeing the amount of trepidation in the former shinobi's eyes, Pira shook her head before moving to capture his lips with her own, stopping him from rambling any further. Pulling away from the lip lock, the redhead gave a small smile. I feel the same way, Naruto. Naruto could only don a dopey grin and blush. Pira giggled at the dumb look on her captain, now boyfriend's, face, before snuggling back into his side, content to gaze out at the moonlit forest below, eager to face the future and whatever it brought together. Chapter 31. RWBY twiddled with her fingers as she stared down the angry/disappointed glare of her sister and fellow captain who had just found out about her little solo mission the night before. Rubbing his temples, Naruto sighed out. And you didn't call any of us, why? 'Cause I thought I could handle it, RWBY muttered. And what if you couldn't? Yang questioned, her worry for her baby sister spurring her on. As much as she knew that RWBY was not at all the same little girl from their younger years and that their uncle had groomed the partial redhead into a force to be reckoned with, RWBY was still naive and prone to making dumb decisions. Watching as his fellow blonde grilled her younger sister, Naruto couldn't help but wonder, is this what Kaka-sensei and Ero-sennin felt like when I made a stupid mistake? Ha! You say that like you don't still make dumbass decisions. Kurama barked in laughter. No one asked you, you stupid ball of fur. Naruto childishly retorted. Getting only mocking laughter as a response, the blonde came back to the current situation to see a sheepishly cowed RWBY. Unable to deal with seeing the younger teen sad, Naruto caved and hugged the silver-eyed captain before asking. So what did you tell Ojban and Ironwood? I may have told them that I fought the person and that they hinted that there was something going on in the southeast. RWBY sheepishly admitted. A surprised Blake was the one to speak up next. Why would you do that? Well, I know how much this whole thing with the White Fang and Torchwick has been bothering you, so I figured that if I mentioned it, they would send us out to investigate. RWBY answered with a smile. Her raven-haired teammate was rightfully surprised by the answer. You didn't have to do that for me, RWBY. Weiss nodded, joining in. And it was pretty risky considering you just lied to our own headmaster and Ironwood as well. RWBY chuckled. Funny, cause he actually congratulated me on recognizing a threat, taking action, and doing the best you could. Having come to know what kind of leader and man the general was through his own brief interactions with him, Naruto could only sigh. Sounds like something he'd say. Guy's all about action. From her spot of leaning on her boyfriend, Pyrrha giggled, garnering everyone's attention. Sorry, I just thought it was funny coming from you of all people. Everyone shared a laugh at the blonde's expense, realizing how hypocritical the Jinchuriki's statement had been. Pyrrha! You're supposed to be on my side. Naruto whined, causing everyone to laugh even more. Rolling her eyes at her fellow blonde, Yang moved to the desk against the wall, retrieving a canister of some sort. Well, I was going to give you this package that Dad sent, but now that you lied to our headmaster, I don't think you deserve it. Yang! Don't be like that! RWBY cried, attempting to reach for the canister while Yang easily kept her younger sister at bay. As the two siblings fought, Naruto had to quirk an eyebrow when he saw Kurama actually get up from his position on Pyrrha's lap. What's up, fuzzbutt? As if to answer his question, Yang and RWBY's little quarrel caused the canister to open, releasing a rolled-up thing of fur. To everyone's utter surprise, the roll of fur popped open, revealing that it was actually a gray and white-colored corgi who was happily wagging its tail. Before anyone could question how bizarre it was for a dog to pop out of a small metal cylinder, RWBY happily cried out. Zwei! Ren, completely flabbergasted, asked. Your dad sent a dog through the mail? Yang shrugged. He's always doing wacky stuff like this. Blake, currently cowering behind Naruto, fearfully peeked out over his shoulder. Your father or the dog? It was one thing dealing with Kurama, but now this mangy mutt is going too. Weiss' tirade slowed to a crawl as she found herself lost in the wide gray eyes of the painting corgi. After a brief staring contest, the Schnee heiress continued in a much happier tone. Live with us forever? Yes, he is. Oh, yes, he is. It wasn't long until Nora joined the fray, happily playing with the little corgi. Run! We need to get a dog. The hammer wielder cried, holding Zwei in her arms with a pleading look. Kurama rolled his eyes. PFT. Don't see why everyone's so worked up over a dog. Naruto, sensing his partner's jealousy, laughed. It's alright, Kurama, you're still special to me. The QB scoffed. Like I need your validation. The whiskered teen shrugged before moving to greet the new furry guest. Either Yang or RWBY were surprised at how quickly Zwei was to take a liking to Naruto, both realizing how well the former shinobi would have fit into their family. The group's playtime was interrupted when the voice of Glinda came over the speakers in the hallway. Would all first-year students please report to the amphitheater? Please tell me he's housebroken. Blake asked, still eyeing the energetic corgi warily. RWBY nodded enthusiastically. Definitely. Zwei is a super smart dog. Arms slung behind his head, Naruto grinned. Well, if anything, Kurama can watch him. The kitsune was quick to oppose the idea. There is no way in hell you are making me babysit this mongrel. Pretty please, Kurama? RWBY pleaded, her eyes watering and her lip quivering with her hands clasped together. The mighty nine-tailed fox lasted all of 3 seconds against the adorableness of RWBY's pout. Fine. I'll watch the mutt. Naruto had a mini celebration at seeing someone else on the other side of RWBY's cuteness. The group of teens began to make their way out of the room, though Blake had to hitch a ride on her laughing partner, leaving the two quadrupeds alone. Kurama glared at the panting corgi. I already hate you. Zwei barked in response. Wow, I don't think I've ever seen the school this packed before. RWBY noted, seeing the intermixing of students from the visiting academies. Yeah, kinda reminds me of the Chunin exams back home, you know, without all the death and killing intent. Naruto commented, remembering his first and only experience with the exams. We've said it before, but Foxy, your time was crazy. Yang added, the others quickly agreeing. The temporarily displaced shinobi pouted. It wasn't that bad. Pira was quick to counter. How many teams actually made it through those exams? Recalling just how few had managed to make it out of the forest of death, Naruto's sweat dropped. I still don't see your point. The redhead gave her captain a flat stare. Before anyone else could chime in, their deputy headmistress called out. Quiet. Quiet, please. Seeing she had everyone's attention, the blonde continued. Professor Ashbin would like to share a few words before we begin. Aforementioned headmaster calmly strode up to the mic. Today we stand together united. Mistral. Atlas. Vacuo. Vale. The four kingdoms of Remnant. On this day nearly 80 years ago, the largest war in recorded history came to an end. It was a war of ignorance, of greed, and of oppression. A war that was about much more than where borders fell or who traded with who, but about the very idea of individualism itself. The silver-haired headmaster paused, taking in the look of the students gathered before him before continuing in a slightly more weary tone. We fought for countless reasons, one of which being the destruction of all forms of art and self-expression, and, as you are well aware, that was something many could not stand for. Naruto, who had only recently begun delving into Remnant's past, tightened his fists at the idea of such a war. During his short, but extremely well-traveled, shinobi career, he had personally fought against many tyrannical leaders who wished to shove the common man under their greedy thumbs. Gato, the disgusting shipping magnate, drug dealer, and smuggler who had drained Nami no Kuni to near desolation and broken its people down until they were too poor, weak, and hungry to fight back. Dodo Kazuhana, the greedy man who had not only staged a rebellion and killed his brother, but also kidnapped and attempted to murder his own niece, all in the pursuit of a treasure he knew nothing about, and that was just the tip of the iceberg with Naruto. Come to think of it, he had gotten tangled up in several rebellions and wars throughout his career. Not to mention fighting literal demons like Morio. Maybe Pira had a point after all. As a result, those who opposed this tyranny began naming their children after one of the core aspects of art itself, color. It was their way to demonstrate that, not only would they refuse to tolerate this oppression, but neither would the generations to come. Ashbin continued with a certain firmness to his voice. And it was a trend that is held to this very day. We encourage individuality, expressionism, and unity through diversity. A feeling of pride and happiness began to reverberate throughout the hall as many of the young students realized just how much their names really meant. Reminds me of how Erosenin and Gigi would talk about the will of fire, Naruto recalled with a certain fondness. After all, it was those same teachings that had guided him through his life, serving as his moral compass and eventually becoming a foundation to his nindo. As I have said, today we stand together united. But this bond cannot exist without effort. Which is why today, while the rest of the world celebrates peace, huntsmen and huntresses will work to uphold it. The headmaster concluded. As he continued, the students' eyes were drawn to the holograms that began to materialize to the sides. As first-year students, you will be tasked with shadowing a professional huntsman or huntress on a mission. Some of you may be taken out of the kingdom for several days, others may work within the walls for the rest of the week. It was at this point that many of the younger students began to grow giddy with excitement, eager for the opportunity to show off what they were made of out in the field. But Ashbin was not done, his eyes scanning across the many eager faces before him. But no matter which path you choose, remember to be safe, remember your training, and remember to do your very best. Applause met the conclusion of Ashbin's lengthy speech, though many were far more eager to check out the variety of missions displayed before them. This is perfect. All we gotta do is shadow a huntsman who will be heading out to the southeast, and then ditch them to go exploring. Ruby cheered. While she got a round of agreements from her team, she was surprised to see a much more laid-back team and NPR casually chatting with each other. Of course this piqued her interest, as she would have thought that Naruto of all people would be as excited as her and her team. Why aren't you guys as pumped as we are? We're finally getting to do some real huntsman work. Pira chuckled at the young captain's enthusiasm. Well, this may be your first official mission. We've been doing them for months now, remember? Yan grinned and attempted to goad her fellow blonde. What? Not up for kicking bad guy-ass Foxy? In an odd change of character, Naruto didn't rise to the challenge, folding his arms behind his head. Not really. The last few days of getting to actually relax and train properly have been pretty great, So we decided to take a break, which Ashbin okayed. Knowing that Team NPR had been going on a near constant stream of missions the last month or so and sympathizing with a want for our time, Blake offered a smile. Well, you guys do deserve a little bit more rest, enjoy it. We won't be resting for long though, Ren commented. Yup, Nora cheered. We got some serious training to do. Good luck out there. And if you ever need backup, you know who to call, Naruto called with a grin and a casual wave. With that, the two teams split, Team RWBY off to find a suitable mission while the members of Team NPR headed to the nearest training room, eager to improve in any way they could. Swayton, Tepidama, water release, liquid bullets. Pira grimaced as she could feel her left arm shake violently as the pressurized ball of water slammed into Akuo. Thankfully, she had also had the foresight to use her semblance to keep her anchored to the floor as well, otherwise the force behind the jutsu alone would have likely sent her careening into a wall. Taking the opportunity, Nora leapt over her red-haired teammate and made a dash towards Naruto, Manghao trailing behind her. However, before the hammer wielder was able to get even remotely close to her captain, two more copies of the blonde burst out from the ground below, ready to put a stop to her advance. However, as quickly as they appeared, they were dispelled, one receiving a spinning storm flower to the head while the other was shot point blank by Rin, who had appeared to aid his childhood friend. In usual Naruto fashion, the Jinchuriki was quick to replace the fallen clones, easily creating a handful more. Those were just as quick to fall though, Akuo cleanly cutting through each of the doppelgangers like a buzz saw before returning to its owner's hand, with a triumphant grin. Nora continued her charge, intent on finally scoring a hit on Naruto, who had so far managed to keep them at arm's length thanks to an unending sea of clones and a bevy of jutsu. But now that was all gonna come to an end. Nora choked on her spit, unable to comprehend her current situation. Manghao had not only been stopped dead, a feat she had never seen or thought anyone capable of, but Naruto had done it with his bare hands. Even Pira, who was able to control polarity, had never tried to stop the massive hammer/grenade launcher with her bare hands, seeing it only as a one-way trip to the infirmary with every bone in her hands broken, still completely dumbfounded. Nora switched her gaze to meet her captain's, hoping to find some answers to the conundrum before her. Seeing the twin pools of liquid amber staring at her answered all of her questions. Nora's thought process was violently interrupted when she was sent sailing through the air thanks to a powerful palm strike to the abdomen. Neither Rin nor Pira were given much time to process what they had seen, the blonde moving on them in a blur of movement. In the span of a few seconds, Pira and Rin had joined Nora in a heap on the floor, all three groaning in pain. Unsurprisingly though, Pira was the only one to get back to her feet, grimacing as she did so, with a determined fire in her eyes. She charged forward with a jab from Milo. Naruto was easily able to swerve to the side of the jab, ducking under the follow-up swing, then flipping away in time to avoid having Akuo smashed into his face. But Pira wasn't about to give Naruto any time to collect himself. Already sprinting towards him with Milo held high above her head. Naruto's eyes widened as he was forced to quickly bring his hand up to bat aside the incoming spear. Seeing Pira rushing forward with Akuo as a battering ram, the blonde pulled his fist back. A shock of air exploded outwards as fist met metal, her arms shaking under Naruto's superior strength. Pira quickly used her semblance to call Milo back to her, using its short sword form and going for a wide slash. The Jinchuriki met the slash with a kunai, using the small knife to easily hold back the transforming weapon. Having spent so much time around her blonde boyfriend, Pira couldn't help it when a mischievous smirk crossed her face. Alarm bells were instantly blaring in Naruto's head when he saw the redhead's devious look. Suddenly feeling every single piece of metal on his person grow exponentially heavier, he realized too late what his red-haired partner was up to. With a mighty pulse of her aura, Pira used her control over all things metal and pushed the whiskered Uzumaki away with enough force to send him careening into a nearby wall. Groaning as he extricated himself from the crater he had made, Naruto couldn't help but let his mind draw similarities between what Pira had just done and Nagato's Shinra Tensei, heavenly subjugation of the omnipresent god. Though Naruto doubted the invincible girl would ever be able to wipe out an entire village with one fell use of the attack, it was still an impressive and ingenious use of her semblance. Shaking off the daze, Naruto chained together a set of hand seals, then cupped his mouth. Katan, Hozenka no Jutsu, Fire Release, Phoenix Flower Jutsu. Pira spun out of the way of the first fireball, but quickly had to bring Akuo up to defend herself from the several others that followed it. Lowering her shield, the emerald-eyed teen was prepared to launch her own offensive but was stopped from doing so when a shock of blonde suddenly appeared in her field of view. Raisin Gan! Any plans she had were forcibly expelled along with the air in her lungs as the spinning ball of chakra was slammed into her abdomen before it unraveled and exploded, sending her flying across the arena. Taking a deep breath and allowing his eyes to bleed back into their normal blue, Naruto moved to check on his team. You guys want to end it here? Nora and Rin only offered a flat stare while Pira let out a groan of pain. Naruto's sweat dropped. May have gone a bit overboard. You think? Nora childishly retorted, using Manghao like a makeshift cane. I'd rather be sore and bruised here than seriously injured out in the field though. Rin remarked, pointing out the reason for their training. Feeling what was left of her aura already numbing the pain and slowly healing her body, Pira questioned. But why did you not use your weapon? It was then Naruto grew slightly sheepish. I'm still not all that great with using it. It'd be more like a handicap than anything. That piqued Pira's interest. After all, she had spent quite a bit of time helping the blonde better his huntsman's skills. But when we last sparred, you'd made huge improvements in using it. Can't you also use your jutsu with it? Ren added. Naruto gave a shrug. Yes and no. I can use some pretty basic jutsu like the one I used back during initiation, but I still need to use hand seals to perform a lot of my more powerful ones. And while I'm pretty good at using High-No Ishi by itself, I'm still trying to figure out a way to really incorporate it with how I usually fight. So you're trying to essentially combine your shinobi and huntsman training into one fluid style. Pira concluded. The whiskered teen nodded. Easier said than done though. Well, we're always happy to help where needed. Ren offered. Yeah. I'd be happy to help whip you into shape, Nora shouted with fires raging in her eyes. Seeing the hammer wielder so enthusiastic about training gave Naruto flashes of horrid green jumpsuits, blinding smiles, and sunsets. Pira frowned in concern seeing her boyfriend shiver in what looked like a mix of fear and disgust. Something wrong? Naruto forced a smile. All good. And thanks, Nora, but I think me and my clones can handle it. Nora shrugged, completely oblivious to her captain's unease. Naruto frowned in thought as he gazed at the shattered moon that hung almost ominously in the sky above. Kurama? The chakra beast grunted. Is it just me, or does it feel like something big is about to happen? Naruto wondered. The Kyuubi gave it a moment's thought before rousing from his resting, staring out into the horizon with a look of angry confusion. No, it's not just you. A few moments ago I felt something. I have no idea what in the world it could be, but it was almost as if a huge gathering of pure negativity awakened. You're right, Naruto concluded, his eyes now a liquid amber. But now it's gone. You think it could be her? Kurama shook his head. No. Kagaya was just like Tusama and had an unmistakable aura to her. That, and while whatever it was felt old, it was nowhere near as old as myself or even you. Naruto pouted. Hey! I thought you said I'm still technically only 17? Resuming his previous position as a coiled-up ball of fur, Chakra Monster shrugged. You are. But you are also technically several hundred years old considering we're now in the future. Alright, now you've lost me, Naruto admitted. Kurama rolled his eyes. Another day of rest and relaxation. Just what the doctor ordered, Naruto exclaimed with a grin. As much as he loved training and being active, Jiraiya and Tsunade had made sure he also knew how to take a break and enjoy himself, peering up from the copy of The Utterly Gutsy Shinobi that Naruto had lent to her. Pira smiled. I must admit, getting some time to lay back and relax is quite nice. Taking a sip from his cup of tea, Ren wholeheartedly agreed. And it's a much-deserved one as well. Though you two look really comfy there. Nora grinned, winking at Naruto and Pira, the later of the two curled up against the former's side. The red-haired beauty blushed prettily and hid behind the book while Naruto scratched the back of his head, his own whiskered cheeks heating up. As Naruto was about to retort, Kurama jumped up, surprising the four teens. Massive amounts of Grimm are heading towards the city. What? As if to confirm what Kurama had said, the entire school was filled with the blaring sound of the kingdom's defense system going into high alert. Alert, incoming Grimm attack. Threat level 6. Without wasting a single second, Team NNPR had leapt to their feet and were racing to don their battle gear. As one they sprinted out of their room, quickly making their way to a waiting bullhead. They were only marginally surprised to see several other teams already doing the same, several professors following suit. As Team NNPR was lifted into the air, Naruto stared into the namesake of the academy, somewhat surprised to see Ashbin standing there, readily matching the younger teen's stare. The silver-haired headmaster simply gave a nod to the Jinchuriki, Naruto's features settling into a resolute and cold mask before returning the gesture, understanding exactly what had just been asked of him. Ashbin trusted him and had given him a mission, one Naruto would not fail. Chapter 32. With a serious frown on her face, Ruby spun crescent rows around, the large blade cleaving through several Beowulf in one smooth rotation. Rolling with the momentum of the massive scythe, the young teen ducked under a claw swipe, the bladed end of Crescent Rose's pole piercing through the skull of a creep grim while another of its brothers' heads was blown to pieces by one of the sniper scythe's bullets, shifting her weight so that she and her weapon spun with each other. Ruby fired off a shot that sent her plowing feet first into the sternum of an approaching Ursa with enough force to collapse the bear-like creature's ribcage. Using the Ursa's fading corpse as a springboard, the young captain launched herself into the air. Pouring her aura into Crescent Rose and using the weight of the weapon to spin her, Ruby unleashed a circular red energy blade that tore a swath through the grim surrounding her. Landing in a crouch, the silver-eyed teen allowed herself a quick breath of air before disappearing in a burst of rose petals, continuing to cut a bloody path through the invading Grim. Nearby, her older sister was also busy taking out Grim by the handfuls, her eyes glowing their light crimson and her hair flowing like literal flames. Yang plowed her fist straight through the skull of a Beowulf. Her arm still lodged in the fading essence of the Grim, the blonde brawler fired off a shot from Ember Celica. The several Grim that had been behind their fallen brother were engulfed in a consuming storm of flames. Ducking low, Yang narrowly dodged a paw swipe from a massive Ursa Major. Firing off a shot from her gauntlets, the blonde teen used the momentum to send her elbow plowing into the bear-like Grim's abdomen. Quickly pivoting on her foot, the teen let a number of lightning-fast jabs fly, each hitting with a shock of fire, causing the lumbering Grim to cry out in pain as its insides were pulverized. Invading the still-stunned Ursa's guard, Yang reared her fist back and unleashed a devastating uppercut that sent the creature into the air with a flash of fire. Leaping into the air, a grin stretching across her face, Yang finished her combo off with a vicious haymaker. The now dead Grim's body was sent rocketing into the street below with enough force to send rubble flying into other nearby Grim, stunning them. Letting out a war cry, Yang came falling back down to the earth in an explosion of flames. Just like her partner and captain, Blake was just as easily cleaving a bloody path through the swarming Grim. The raven-haired fauness gave out a grunt as she used Gamble's shroud in its singular form to lop off the head of a young Beowulf. In a smooth flow of movement, Blake unsheathed the small blade of her weapon and brought up the sheath portion to hold back the claws of an attacking Beowulf. With a grunt of effort, the amber-eyed fauness used the smaller blade of Gamble's shroud to pierce through her attacker's skull. Before she could even remove the blade, Blake was forced to use her semblance to dodge a spinning ball of bone spikes. Now perched on the shoulders of the fading Beowulf, Blake proceeded to viciously tear her weapon from the corpse's skull and paused, waiting for her opening. As the Borbotusk came out of its death ball to reorient itself, Blake launched the half of Gamble's shroud attached to her elastic ribbon and lassoed the unsuspecting Grim around the tusks. Pushing off her quickly fading platform, Blake pulled on her ribbon. Still not quite grasping its situation, the quadruped Grim was pulled towards and over the teen. The large blade-sheath of Gamble's shroud easily cleaved into the underbelly of the squealing Grim. Panting as exhaustion was quickly catching up to her, Blake gathered herself before brandishing Gamble's shroud. Briefly, she allowed her eyes to scan the rest of the town square, seeing both Yang and Ruby doing their absolute best to cut down the number of Grim. Catching a shock of white, Blake allowed herself to refocus on her own battle, knowing her teammates could handle themselves, and Weiss was proving that just as well as the sisters. Stabbing Murdernaster into the ground, massive crystals of ice rose from the ground around the heiress, skewering quite a number of Grim. Sprinting up one of her ice formations, Weiss leapt into the air, spun the barrel of her dust-powered rapier and let loose a volley of flames, an attack she had copied from a certain Whisker teen. Like meteors, the dust-born orbs crashed to the earth and bathed the ground in a sea of flames, the conflagration eating several handfuls of Grim. Landing atop one of her ice spires with all the poise of a noblewoman, Weiss took a deep breath, feeling her already low reserves of aura drop even lower after that combo. Seeing the almost unending sea of black and white continue to march forward, the Schnee heiress steeled herself. Perfect time to field test some of the runes she and Naruto had been working on. Naruto frowned as his nose was assaulted by an all too familiar smell. The smell of blood. The smell of death. The once calm streets of Vale had been filled with the stench of battle, and he had to use all of his willpower to hold himself back from leaping out of the bullhead right then and there, knowing that they had to stop this at the source. That didn't stop him from sending out several dozen clones though, all of which were created with the sole purpose of ferrying any civilians to safety and eliminating the dark blight that had invaded his new home. His worries were also somewhat assuaged as he saw several of Beacon's students, professors, and vetted huntsmen doing just the same. Hell, he was sure he had even seen Carden and his team taking down some of the invading force. Even more comforting though was the sight of several of the other academy's students helping out as well. Seeing the source of the Grim attack coming up, Naruto nodded to his teammates. "Let's show these Grim why you don't mess with our home," Naruto cried out. Pira, Nora, and Rin readied their weapons and gave a shout of agreement. Using chakra, Naruto climbed his way to the roof of the bullhead, his hair whipping in the winds. Pira, using her own semblance, joined her boyfriend atop the flying transport, Ren and Nora not too far behind. With a feral grin, Naruto called out to Nora. "Meteor?" Nora matched her captain's grin and brandished Manhild. "Locked and loaded." Giving herself enough room for a running start, Naruto took up a spot at the head of the bullhead. As Nora began to sprint towards him, the blonde captain summoned a clone that launched him into the air. Nora followed after her captain. At the apex of their flight, Naruto grabbed Nora's arm, spun, and launched the hammer wielder straight at the ground. Back to back, the four girls of Team RWBY tried their best to keep up a strong front, though each of them was definitely feeling the effects of having fought for almost 2 days straight with such little rest. Even still, they were damn ready to do their best to defend Vale. Ah, smosh! Wide-eyed, the four girls watched as a pink blur slammed into the ground not too far from them with enough force to cause a miniature earthquake. "Odama Raisingan!" came another battle cry from the air, this one accompanied by a blur of yellow and blue and an explosion that nearly knocked the girls off their feet. Smiles of relief washed over the members of Team RWBY's faces as the rest of Team NNPR appeared on the battlefield. "Katon, Karyu Enden, fire release, fire dragon flame bomb!" Naruto called out, unleashing a gargantuan dragon of flames upon the mass of Grim, incinerating a huge chunk of them as well as taking care of one of the King Taijutsu in one fell swoop. The blonde wasn't done there though, summoning up an army of Kage Bunshin, each clone wielding their own copy of Hai no Ishi. As one, the army of blue-eyed teens met the Grim head-on. Pira was meanwhile a graceful storm of red death, as she wielded her two weapons with all the skill she had trained for, mercilessly cutting down handfuls of Grim with ease. Throwing a ko, the shield liberated many Grim of their limbs and other body parts as it spun like a deadly buzzsaw, continuing to wreak havoc as it was called back to its master. Milo was likewise responsible for felling many Grim, Pira shifting the weapon to suit her needs as she cut, pierced, and shot through the horde of Grim, her normally gentle and kind disposition replaced by the persona of the invincible girl. Extending Milo in its spear form, the redhead skewered to creep through the skull. Retracting the spear, Pira cartwheeled out of the way of Alpha's massive paw. Catching a ko midway through a spin dodge, she redirected the deadly shield at the attacking Alpha. While the older Grim was able to bat aside the shield, it left itself open, which Pira was quick to capitalize on, stabbing the Alpha through the underside of its jaw with Milo's short sword form. Moving like water, Pira proceeded to tear her weapon out of the Alpha, take a knee, and unleash a volley of piercing dust bullets into the incoming crowd of Grim. Nora was also making quick work of the Grim, each swing of Manhild crushing several at a time. Shifting the massive warhammer into its grenade launcher form, Nora grinned ferally as she unleashed several rounds into the horde of Grim. Explosions of pink rocked the town square, taking out handfuls of the invading Grim. Ren was just as quickly disposing of the invading blight, showing that, while he wasn't as much of a front-lines fighter as his teammates, he was just as easily capable of holding his own. The twin pistols of Stormflower unleashed a hail of bullets upon a crowd of weaker and younger Grim, the bullets easily piercing through the various creep and Beowulfs. Without missing a beat, the emerald-clothed teen batted aside the paw of an Ursa that had tried to sneak up on him. Backflipping over the slightly stunned Grim, Ren looped the twin blades of his pistols around the beast's neck before pushing off its back, Stormflower's blades cleanly slicing through the Ursa's neck and spine. Team RWBY allowed themselves a breather as they watched their friends decimate the horde of Grim, already having cut down the number of them by a third or more. Some of the smarter and older Grim quickly realized they were now on the losing side and were trying to make their escape, their survival instinct taking precedence over anything else. However, more reinforcements arrived on the scene in the form of Team CFVY and Professors Port and Panathenia. The two professors and the older team were just as easily able to cut through the plague of black and white, and even managed to stop most of the Grimm from escaping further into the city. What really got everyone's attention, though, was the arrival of the Elysian Air Fleet, the massive airships bringing with them a veritable army of the kingdom's newly unveiled Elysian Knights, working together. The gathered forces of Atlas and Vale were able to quickly subdue the threat, Glinda arriving on the battlefield and using her semblance to cover up the hole that had allowed the Grimm in, acting as the final nail in the coffin. Well, that was fun? Jan allowed herself to collapse back onto the floor, her legs restlessly kicking back and forth as they hung over the edge of Beacon's airfield. Weiss rolled her eyes. An army of Grimm invaded downtown Vale, many people were harmed and killed, and most of the market district is nothing but rubble. Not exactly what I'd call fun. True, but thanks to the timely response of both active duty huntsmen and students from all 4 of the academies, many more people were saved, the Grimm were eradicated, and the ones responsible for all of this were put behind bars. And while some buildings were destroyed, they can be rebuilt, Pyrrha replied. While his teammates and friends continued to go over the events of the last few days, Naruto was having a very different conversation with his Biju partner. I can't just sit back anymore, Kurama. Innocent people were killed today, because we haven't handled her. And many more will be murdered if we jump the gun, dumbass. Kurama scolded. We have no idea how far this rabbit hole goes, and if we just go in there guns blazing, we may force something we're not prepared to handle. Naruto gave out a grunt. I can't just sit on my ass and do nothing while Cinder keeps moving whatever plan she has forward. And I'm not saying to, but you have to realize that we can't handle this like we're still in our time, and just confront her head on. It's not just us against them anymore, it's us against them and the creatures of Grimm. Kurama was quick to remind his container of the unknown variable. The minute we start something with her, you can bet your ass that the Grimm will be quick to get in on the action, and even with all of your clones, there's no way you'll be able to split yourself between protecting Vale from Cinder and the Grimm. A low growl rumbled through Naruto's chest as he was forced to realize his furry partner was right, though he was still far too stubborn to just give up like that. You say that like it's just you and me. There's Ojban, Glinda, and Ironwood. Outside of us, they are the only other ones who are truly ready to fight a war, Kurama interrupted. Your friends may be strong, and I have no doubt that, one day, they will be ready. But that day is not today, nor is it in a month. As it stands, they are still far too inexperienced to fight a war, let alone win one with enemies as ruthless as Grimm and Cinder's group. Cinder's 2 brats have spilled blood, and they will not be afraid to do so again. The same cannot be said for your friends. Naruto frowned and clenched his fists, stubbornly trying to think of a rebuttal of some kind. But Kurama knew his Jinchuriki all too well. That's not even taking into account that we still have no idea what is going on with Kaguya. For all we know, she could be tracking us now and simply waiting for her chance to strike. If we know anything about her, it's that she has patience in spades. She waited for generations for her plan to free herself from the moon. I doubt she has any problems waiting a few more for us to slip. Naruto was pulled from the mental conversation by Yang tapping on his head with her fist. All right, cut it out, would ya? Sorry, the lights were on, but I was checking to see if anyone was home. Yang quipped. Blake rolled her eyes. Something wrong? Naruto shook his head. No, just thinking about this mess of a day. I have to agree with Pyrrha though. I think we did pretty good today. Romans locked up, the city is being rebuilt, and we managed to keep the casualty count pretty low. RWBY chimed in with a hopeful smile. Naruto offered a grin. Yeah, I guess that's true. But we still got a tournament to prepare for. The 4 members of Team RWBY groaned. Before that though, sleep. Yang cried. While the girls of Team RWBY celebrated, Pyrrha was busy gazing at her blonde partner in curiosity. He's still worried about that Kaguya woman, isn't he? But he's trying not to worry us. The redhead looked at her hand pensively and clenched her fist. We have to get stronger. Kurama spared a glance at his partner's significant other, and was slightly surprised to see a fire ignite in her eyes. Not able to help it, the QB laughed to himself. I knew there was a reason I liked her. You and the brat really are perfect for each other. Kushina would definitely approve. Ojban. What is the meaning of this? The silver-haired headmaster merely quirked a brow. Forgive me, counselor, but what do you mean? The boy Ojban. There are reports of identical copies of him saving countless citizens and helping to repel the Grimm. The voice of an irate counselor bellowed through the video chat. I fail to see how this is a bad thing. Ashbin queried. Before the sane, shadowed counselor could reply, another one, this one far more collected, interrupted. We will talk about the boy later. Right now, I believe the most pressing matter is the fact that a small army of Grimm invaded our city in broad daylight, injuring dozens and thankfully only killing few. How was this allowed to happen? Another of the shadowy figures cut in. I agree. Had it not been for the timely response of our huntsmen, students from the other kingdoms, and General Ironwood's forethought, the end result may have been much more grievous. Ashbin took a sip from his ever-present mug before replying. Unfortunately, I lack the ability to see into the future, and was not able to fully prepare our kingdom for today. However, I am thankful that my contingency plans were well placed. Contingency plans? A stunned Ironwood asked, his shock mirrored audibly by Vale's councilman. Yes, plans I had placed to prepare for the worst. The bespectacled headmaster replied. One of which was young Naruto Uzumaki. I was more than aware of his ability to copy himself an innumerable amount of times. That, along with the experience and skill of his teammates, meant they would be a great boon to our forces here, which is why they were kept here at the school instead of being sent out like their fellow students. But Ashbin continued. Furthermore, the young women of Team RWBY along with Dr. Oblek were more than capable of acting as a scouting party and helping to stem the flow of the Grimm into the city, cushioning the blow as it were. The stunned counselors took a moment to gather themselves, never having expected Ashbin to be so prepared, especially since the reports from Ironwood had led them to believe the exact opposite. They had made the video call with every intention of putting Beacon's headmaster on the spot and even putting him in a bind he couldn't escape. Now here they were, caught flat-footed, and no way to regain their footing with any semblance of poise. Yes, well, it seems that your forethought was well called for. It is good to know that our kingdom and her citizens are in good hands. Without a word more, the counselors ended the call on their end, leaving Beacon and Atlas headmasters alone. I'm sorry, I doubted you, Ironwood said, finally breaking the silence between the two. Ashbin sighed. You were only trying to do what you thought was right, James, and for that, I can't fault you. The Atlesian general nodded. Thank you. I'll leave you be, I have to talk with a certain someone. Knowing exactly who his friend was talking about, Ashbin nodded. Find out what you can, James. There are still far too many things we don't know. Ironwood nodded before ending the call. Turning his chair to face the setting sun, Ashbin steepled his fingers in front of him. The first move has been made. What will you do now, Salem? We'll make number 7, the afterlife of the party. Oh. I'm so proud of you, Sochi. She's a keeper for sure, Tabane. A woman with long light red hair that trailed to her knees cheered. A man with a wild mane of golden spikes laughed at his wife's antics. Guess he got more than just my hair and eyes. I can't wait to see the beautiful grandbabies they'll give me. The woman cheered again, her violet eyes sparkling at the thought of several babies with either blonde or red hair and a mix of blue and emerald green eyes. Or maybe one of them would inherit her violet eyes. I still say that the Nico girl would have been better for him. After all, the quiet ones are always the kinkiest. A man with wild gray hair giggled perversely. The older man was quickly shut down when the crimson-haired woman slammed her fist into the top of his head. You keep my son out of your dirty fantasies, Ero-senin. The blonde-haired man chuckled nervously as he tried to calm his wife. Calm down, Kushi-chan. You know Jiraiya-sensei was only kidding, right? While he may be an unashamed and self-proclaimed super-pervert, even he had some preservation instincts left, even in death. Yeah? Only kidding. Kushina huffed, but allowed herself to fall into the embrace of her husband. I'll believe you this time. Jiraiya, believing that he was in the clear, heaved a sigh of relief, only to receive a kick to the ass. TCH, idiot! The old toad sage cried crocodile tears as he cradled his no doubt bruised behind. Tsuheim, why are you so cruel? Tsunade rolled her eyes. Because someone has to keep your idiotic ass in line. But I agree with Kushina-chan, that Pira girl will do good for the Gaki. He needs someone just as strong-willed as him to keep him in line. The two women high-fived. An elderly voice chuckled, joining the group. While Jiraiya's reasoning may be off, I have to agree that the young Faunus girl fit him just as well as Ms. Nikos, if not better. Jiraiya, suddenly healed of all wounds, leapt to his feet and wrapped an arm around his sensei's shoulders. I knew I wasn't the only one who saw it. While the older crowd went back and forth, arguing about the love life of a certain whiskered blonde, said Blonde's former teammates, and friends chatted amongst themselves. Man, what a drag! Even in the future, that damn blonde can't help but get into trouble. A young teen with a cigarette dangling from his lips drawled out. Really, Shikamaru? We're dead and you're still complaining? A blonde dressed in purple replied. Giggling at the antics of her friends, a pink-haired teen turned to her teammate. Anything to add, Sasuke-kun? The aforementioned raven-haired teen grunted. I'm just surprised the dope is even in a relationship. But I guess he could have done better. Ma, you wouldn't happen to be thinking of a certain white-haired descendant of yours, would you? A teasing voice cut in. Sasuke grunted and turned away, not even bothering to answer the question, prompting his sensei and Sakura to laugh. As the various cliques of Konoha shinobi chatted amongst themselves, a certain lavender-eyed heiress fondly looked into the puddle of water that showed a whiskered teen smiling widely as he wrapped an arm around his red-haired partner who wore an equally bright smile. Hinata-sama, are you alright? A concerned Niji Hyuga asked, knowing just how much his cousin had admired and loved the blonde Uzumaki. A gentle smile crossed her face as the Hyuga heiress glanced at her cousin. I'm more than okay, Niji-kun. I'm glad that Naruto-kun has found people who make him happy and someone to share his heart with. It's clear that Pira cares just as much for him as he does her. Hinata jumped when she suddenly found herself trapped in a tight hug courtesy of Kushina. Oh. You would have been a wonderful stepdaughter too, Hinata-chan. Managing to free herself from the death grip, the pale-eyed beauty blushed and twiddled her fingers. Thank you, Kushina-sama. Altogether, the group of Konoha's finest laughed at the Hyuga heiress' always apparent shyness. Chapter 33. Break their legs, guys! Nora cheered loudly, cupping her hands in hopes of being heard over the rest of the massive crowd. Naruto grinned, his eyes glued to the fight between his friends in Team RWBY and Team ABRN from Haven. Careful, Nora, Yam might take that advice a little too literally. Nora frantically grabbed her captain by the shoulders and began to violently shake him. But this is so exciting! You can't not be pumped! Noticing that Naruto was quickly growing more and more sick, Ren pulled his childhood friend away while Pira steadied her slightly dazed boyfriend. Shaking off the stars in his vision, the blonde turned his view back to the field below just in time to see Blake literally kick the green-haired member of the enemy team out of the field. Oh, trust me, Nora, I'm just as excited as you are. None of these guys stand a chance against us. The two more excitable members of Team NNPR shared a quick high-five, though Pira was quick to interject. While confidence can be key, we must be careful that we don't overestimate ourselves. Naruto gave his partner a deadpan stare, quickly darting his eyes to the fox wrapped around his neck as a sign. Realizing just what the blonde was getting at, Pira's sweat dropped. Oh, right. The two turned back to watch the match just in time to see Yan deliver a final punishing blow that sent the remaining three members of ABRN hurtling out of the ring. And Team RWBY wins their match with a dynamite 3-man knockout. Team NNPR broke into loud cheers alongside the rest of the crowd, having enjoyed watching the match just as much as everyone else. Stretching as he got up from his seat, Naruto grinned. Come on, let's go congratulate them on their win. Declined. But what? Hearing the shock and distress in the Shinii-era's voice, Naruto strode up along with his teammates. How about we treat you guys? Blake instantly turned her head to the blonde with her eyes wide and shining with unshed tears of hope. Really? Knowing how much she loved her seafood, Naruto grinned. Think of it as our way of saying congrats on your win. You guys have come a long way. Yan grinned. Oh? Is that a challenge, Whiskers? Naruto stared his fellow blonde down. Maybe it is, Firecracker. Before the two could start with their usual antics, Pira intervened. Let's leave that to tournament and eat for now, okay? Seeing the massive bowl of noodles sitting before them, the two blondes agreed to focus on the more important things in life. A few dozen in Naruto's case bowls later saw the two teams of four wearing extremely content looks on their faces while the old shopkeep grinned at the amount of lean he had just earned from feeding bottomless pits like Nora and Naruto. Run, always the logical one, raised a good point as he cleaned his teeth. Was it such a good idea to eat so much before our match? Pira stretched as she answered. Of course, it will give us energy. Naruto rolled his neck. She's right, now I'm all pumped and ready to kick some ass. Speak for yourself. All I'm pumped for is a nap. Blake yawned. With a smile, Pira added. I'm just glad that, for once, we'll have fights with actual guidelines. Blake nodded. True. Between your team's mission track record and everything that happened within the last few weeks, It's nice to actually not have to fight with our lives on the line. Roman Torchwick, the White Fang, Dr. Merlot Grimm, that Kagaya lady, and leftovers from this idiot's past? Weiss listed off. An actual sanctioned match is definitely a nice change of pace. As Naruto was about to retort, he was distracted when he felt his scroll begin to vibrate in his pocket. Pulling out the small white device, Naruto smacked his own head. Oh crap. We gotta go, guys, or we're gonna be late for our match. Yang grinned. You guys ready? Nora pumped her fist in the air. You bet we are. I can bench 5 of me. We have an actual ninja/magician, a world-renowned fighter, and a kung fu master. Those other teams don't stand a chance. Well, good luck anyways, guys. We'll be watching and cheering you on from the stands too. RWBY smiled. With the last few parting words, Team NNPR was off racing back towards the tournament grounds. Naruto grinned as he observed the group of 4 standing across from him and his team. They looked formidable enough, but looking at each of their weapons and how they stood, it was pretty easy to figure out their plan of attack. The single female member of the team was clearly a sniper of sorts and would no doubt take the first chance to set herself up somewhere where she could help pick off her team's opponents. The other 3 were just simply brawlers with differing weapons. Nothing too special there. Naruto's grin grew even wider when he saw the 2 biomes that the spinning hologram had chosen for their battlefield. With Hi-No Ishi in hand, the blonde called out, You guys ready to win us a tournament? Each of his teammates held tighter to their respective weapons and nodded, Nora just as eager as her captain. You betcha. The members of Team BRNZ frowned, their captain stepping forward. I wouldn't be so cocky just because you've got Piranikos on your team. Naruto seemed to ignore the comment, glancing at his orange-haired teammate and his second-in-command. Nora? Pira? If both teams are ready, let the match begin in 3, 2, 1. Professor Oblek yelled out over the PA. Queen's Quake. I Captain Whiskers. Right. As Team BRNZ was about to put their own plan into motion, they were all thrown for a loop when the energetic hammer wielder was launched into the air via the redhead's shield. Rin, keep them pinned. Got it. As the team from Shade Academy attempted to regain their bearings, they were forced into a defensive position as Ren and Naruto both began to unleash a storm of bullets at them. Panicking, Bronze called out, May, you need to get to the tree dash. The dark-skinned youth was interrupted when Nora landed between the 2 teams, her hammer hitting the ground with enough force to lift chunks of the stadium floor into the air as well as throw the 4 teens from vacuole off balance. Trying to regain their footing as the ground continued to shake, Team BRNZ could do nothing as the other 3 members of Team NNPR came hurtling over the chasm Nora had created, weapons at the ready. Bronze saw stars as Naruto delivered the sole of his boot straight to the other captain's face. Roy, the teen with cornrow-style dreadlocks, was equally stunned when Pira rammed Akio into his abdomen, robbing him of all the air in his lungs. Ren meanwhile dealt with May, using a harsh palm thrust to her abdomen. Nolan had the unfortunate luck of having Nora bull rush him, slamming her shoulder straight into his chest. As1. The 4 members of Team BRNZ were sent tumbling into the forests behind them, each gasping for air and already feeling their bodies scream in pain even as their auras worked to numb them. And Team NNPR leads the match with a successful shock and awe-style team attack, dealing some heavy damage to their opponents in Team BRNZ. Professor Port excitedly called out over the loudspeakers. With a powerhouse like Miss Valkyrie on their team, destructive and landscape-altering attacks like that are sure to be an integral part of Team NNPR's strategies. Dr. Oblek added, taking a quick glance behind himself to see the brewing storm overtop the highest peak of the mountain biome. Naruto grinned. Hey Nora, let's show these guys some real shock and awe. Seeing the dark clouds and hearing the telltale crackle of an impending storm, Nora saluted her captain. You got it! Without a word more, the hammer wielder was racing back towards the mountains. Let's keep these guys busy in the meantime. Naruto finished, already sprinting towards the small forest. Ren and Pira didn't even say anything, already having figured out their captain's plan. Wincing as he rubbed his extremely sore jaw, Bronze shakily got to his feet and took a quick glance at his team. Damn it, we can't lose this early in the tournament. Taking deep gulps of air, May used her weapon as a crutch and got to her feet. Guys, they're headed our way and fast. Seeing the rushing 3 members of the team from Beacon, Bronze began to bark out orders. Stick with the original plan. May, get some distance and back us up. Roy, Nolan, you're with me. Despite their injuries, Team BRNZ quickly collected themselves and moved to start their own plan. Mei leaping into the treetops while the three males readied themselves. Seeing the sniper girl leap into the trees, Naruto grinned. Bad move. Without pausing, the blonde Jinchuriki called out. I'll keep the sniper distracted, you two take care of the other three. Ren and Pyrrha said nothing as they watched their captain easily launch himself into the trees above them without even breaking his stride. Glancing at her long-haired teammate, Pyrrha asked, Rose Petal? Grasping one of Stormflower's guns, Ren nodded. As1, the two stretched out an arm and launched their respective weapon, a Ko and one half of Stormflower spinning through the air like a pair of buzzsaws. Shit! Nolan moved and batted away the spinning shield with his bat and only to leave himself open to a slash from Milo that sent him reeling back. Without looking back, Pyrrha ducked under a swing from Bronze and his clawed fists. Spinning while still crouched, the red-headed huntress swiped the dark-skinned teen's legs out from under him. Rolling with the rotation, Pyrrha kicked out with her other leg and slammed the still airborne teen with her armored shin. Rising to her feet in one fluid motion, the redhead brought up Milo to block an attempted hit from Nolan and his baton. Without pause, Pyrrha planted her foot straight into the attacking pink-eyed teen, sending him into a nearby tree with a harsh thud. However, the red-haired beauty was not allowed any reprieve, quickly having to bring up her left hand to stave off a clawed strike from Bronze, using the single piece of armor on her arm as well as her semblance to bat aside the swipe. Extending her right arm forward, Pyrrha extended Milo into its spear form. Caught off balance, Bronze took the jab straight to the chest. Anyone else kinda feel bad for these poor saps? Yang asked as she watched Pyrrha utterly decimate her two opponents. Ruby winced as Bronze was sent tumbling from Pyrrha's spear jab. Yeah, Pyrrha's really not holding back. Neither is Ren. Weiss added. Ren flipped over Roy, delivering a quick kick to the darker teen's exposed back. Landing without much fanfare, the long-haired member of Team NPR caught the other half of his weapon on its return trip. As was his usual style, he wanted to keep this fight as quick as possible. That in mind, Ren sprinted towards his opponent, rolling under the two saw blades that Roy had tossed at him without breaking stride. Coming out of the roll, Ren batted away the two punches the teen with cornrows had attempted, spinning and coming back with a kick straight to the jaw. Holstering one of his twin pistols, Ren followed up his kick with a palm strike to Roy's chest while aiming the other handgun to the side. A quick pull of the trigger and a few flashes of green ended with Roy's returning saws being shot right off the air. Sliding under an attempted grapple from his opponent, Ren grabbed the dark-skinned teen's arms and used the momentum against him, sending Roy flying straight into his other two teammates. I feel bad for that Mei girl. Blake shook her head in pity. Her teammates nodded in agreement, realizing that going up against Naruto alone wasn't exactly a favorable situation. Mei's single visible eye was wide open as she frantically searched for the blonde that had followed her into the trees. While she wasn't exactly great at one-on-one combat, she was confident she could hold her own well enough. However, the blonde beacon student was able to seemingly vanish into the trees without leaving any kind of trail, something that should have been damn near impossible with his bright hair. What made it worse was that he was abusing this ability in tandem with guerrilla warfare tactics, landing a few lightning-fast hits before disappearing from sight. Not only was it extremely frustrating, but the blonde hit pretty damn hard, her thighs and back already bruising from the punches and kicks she had suffered. Now here she was, backed against a tree, her weapon raised and ready to fire at anything that so much as moved near her. Hearing the leaves to her left rustle, Mei spun around as fast as she could and unloaded a full clip of ammo into the treetop. Her chest heaving as the rush of adrenaline wore off, Mei kept scanning the forest, hoping for a sign that she had managed to even tag the elusive blonde. Her heart leapt into her throat when a deep baritone whispered in her ear, "Don't let your enemy get behind you." Before she knew what was even happening, Mei found herself in a heap of limbs in agony alongside her teammates, her entire spine feeling like it had been bent in a way that it shouldn't have been. Rejoining his team outside the forest, Naruto glanced up to the mountain top to see Nora clamber onto it. Crossing his arms, the blonde cockily declared, "Well guys, looks like we got this one." Shakily rising to his feet, Bronze barked out, "We still got some fight left in us, you cocky asshole." The whiskered captain didn't say anything, merely jabbing a thumb in the direction of the mountain. Both Team BRNZ and the audience turned to watch as Nora hefted Magnheld into the air as a bolt of lightning crashed down onto her, accompanied by the loud clap of thunder. "What the dash? It seems like Nora Valkyrie is using her semblance to charge up," Professor Port declared over the PA. Again, the audience and Team BRNZ watched, mouths dropped and eyes wide as Nora emerged from the bolt of lightning with pink sparks dancing around her form and her eyes literally glowing. "Nora, smash!" Naruto called out. Leaping from the mountain top, Nora came down onto the field with all the force of a meteor, impacting the ground with a flash of pink and a thunderclap. The next few seconds were utter chaos, as the tournament field was utterly decimated as the initial strike alone created deep chasms and formed new, jagged mountain-like structures. The forest was not spared the destruction either, seemingly swallowed up by the earth itself. The aftershock of Nora's attack hit just as violently, audience members having to hold onto their seats or the railings as the stadium was rocked by an earthquake. The explosion of air that accompanied the attack ripped the remaining trees right out of the ground and sent them careening into the barrier walls where they exploded into splinters. Team BRNZ, while not at the epicenter of the massive cataclysm-like attack, was just close enough to be hit by all of its after-effects, already on bad footing thanks to the beating from Naruto, Ren, and Pira. Team BRNZ could do nothing as they were tossed around by churning earth. Battered and bruised, the team from Shade could do nothing as they were thrown out of the field, what was left of it, and pummeled into the barrier by the violent winds. The buzzer sounded, signifying that Team BRNZ had been defeated by both ring out and aura depletion, but no clapping or cheering came, everyone still reeling from what they had just witnessed while still more regained their sense of balance. Eventually, as the dust cleared and revealed Team NNPR standing triumphantly atop a newly made plateau, Professor Port announced, "And Team NNPR takes the victory with an unbelievable display of teamwork, skill, and sheer power." For a moment, still no applause came. Eventually, the silence was broken when the girls of Team RWBY and their friends in Team CFEY began to loudly cheer, stirring the crowd into a thunderous roar of approval. Team NNPR looked at each other with wide and triumphant grins, Nora being the first to speak. "We did it, guys!" Naruto looked at his team and nodded. "First round done! Now if everyone could please vacate the arena. We will need some time fix the field after Ms. Valkyrie's display." Oblek boomed over the PA. Looking at the wasteland that the tournament field had become, Nora took a move from Naruto's book and grinned sheepishly while rubbing the back of her head. "Whoops! So what do you think, Jester?" A smooth voice asked in a somewhat formal tone. Moving a candy cane to the side of his mouth, Jester answered with a wide grin. "What do I think, Trey? I think that was a hell of a fight." The now-named Trey, a silver-haired teen garbed in mostly blues and grays, rolled his eyes at his captain's antics. "I mean, do you think they'll pose a problem for us?" This time, their dark-skinned and hulking teammate answered. "It depends on if the randomization process even pits us against them. Clearly we won't be fighting them this round, but looking at the numbers, there is a chance we could go up against them in the doubles round though." The three teens turned their gaze to their fourth and final member, his face hidden by both a dark maroon scarf and a matching wide-brimmed hat, when he tapped Jester on the shoulder. Though no words came out of his mouth, his teammates seemed to understand him perfectly fine, Trey nodding his head. "Sin is right. They're strong enough to make it to last round, so we'll eventually bump into them at some point." Glancing at his taller teammate, the coat-wearing teen asked, "Who do you think they'll be sending to the doubles Aizen?" The taller teen grunted. "They're more than likely gonna be sending Pira Nikos and that blonde captain of theirs, seeing as they're the strongest of the four with a name to themselves." Jester finally spoke up again, a wide grin on his face. "The invincible girl and the blonde maelstrom, huh? Fingers crossed we fight and then." "Well, that was pretty one-sided," Yang remarked offhandedly as Team RWBY began to vacate the stands. Weiss rolled her eyes. "Of course it was. Naruto being what he is isn't exactly fair." "True, but he's also helped the rest of us grow much stronger as well," Blake pointed out. "All I'm hearing is that we're all badasses and this tournament is gonna be a cakewalk." Yang grinned. As Weiss opened her mouth to respond, her eyes were drawn to something that was quickly approaching the stadium. She's here?" Ruby turned to follow her partner's gaze, only to end up confused as she saw what appeared to be an Elysian ship decorated with several trailing flags. Shivu? The Schneeris, still seemingly enraptured by the flying ship, only whispered, "Winter." Chapter 34. "Weiss! Why are we running?" Ruby cried out, jogging to keep up with her partner who seemed to be in some sort of trance, having rushed out of the stadium and back to Beacon's campus at speeds that could match the former's semblance. Surprisingly, a certain blonde interjected, "I just want to know how I got here." As the three came to a stop at Beacon's airfield, Ruby opened her mouth to answer her fellow captain, only to realize she had no answer to his question. That's a good question. How did you end up with us, Naruto? Before the two captains could really question the oddity of Naruto's sudden appearance, they were interrupted as the ship that was the cause of White's odd attitude touched down, followed shortly by its doors opening and allowing a small handful of Elysian Knights to step out and assume formation. Following that, out stepped someone both RWBY and Naruto had only heard briefly about, Winter Schnee. Upon seeing White's older sibling and the way she carried herself, the similarities between the Schnee heiress and his former teammate were now borderline creepy. From the strong yet regal and cold demeanor that the elder Schnee exuded, Naruto couldn't help but liken her to Sasuke's older brother, Itachi. The ensuing conversation between the two did nothing to dissuade him from believing that the Schnee were somehow linked to the Uchiha. "Winter! It's so good to see you!" Wise cheered. Seemingly realizing what she had just said though, the Schnee heiress reverted to an attitude more fitting of her status. "I mean, your presence honors us." Naruto and RWBY stayed quiet, only raising a brow each at White's erratic behavior. Though they both shared a giggle at how flustered the usually reserved Ice Queen was being. "Beacon, it's been a long time," Winter stated, seemingly ignoring her sister's greeting. "The air is different." RWBY shrugged. "I mean, it is fall, so it's probably colder." Weiss glowered at her captain, though Naruto only grinned and slipped his fellow captain a not-so-well-hidden high-five. Fake coughing into her hand, Weiss continued. "So, what are you doing here?" "Classified." Nonplussed by the cut-and-dry answer, the younger Schnee went on. "Oh, right. Well, how long are you staying?" "Classified." "Of course." Naruto and RWBY momentarily stared at the two, both trying to understand the relationship between the siblings before the blonde muttered. "And I thought my friendship with Sasuke was messed up." Having heard bits and pieces of that story, RWBY whispered. "Didn't he stab you in the chest twice?" Naruto simply nodded. "Yup." And just like that, Weiss let go of all of her normal composure, letting words fly in a very RWBY-esque manner. Winter was apparently having none of it though, sharply cutting off her rambling sibling. "I'm more than familiar with how this kingdom runs its bureaucracy. But that is not why I came here." Weiss was by now looking rather sheepish. "Right. Sorry." Winter was far from done though. "Nor did I come here to watch my own blood fail so miserably in battle. But, it appears I have no choice." Naruto, his face set into a frown, had to hold himself back from stepping into the conversation at this point. However, Winter genuinely surprised him with her next few words after dismissing her guard detail. "How have you been?" Weiss perked up instantly, prattling on about her achievements in her classes. This was apparently not the answer Winter was looking for, interrupting her sister yet again, this time with a resounding smack to the head. "Silence, you boob!" While Naruto and RWBY giggled childishly at the elder Schnee's word choice, Weiss pitifully rubbed at her now throbbing skull. "I don't recall asking about your ranking." Taking a short breath, Winter sighed and suddenly her face conveyed a much softer and more caring expression. "I asked how you've been. Are you eating properly? Have you taken up any hobbies? Are you making new friends?" Still rubbing her head, Weiss lamely gestured to the two standing next to her. Well, there's Naruto and RWBY." RWBY continued to giggle as she poked Weiss on the forehead. "Hee hee boob." However, Winter gave a passing glance to the young teen, her gaze shifting to the whiskered teen before her. "So, you are Naruto Uzumaki. My sister has told me a lot of interesting things about you and your abilities. Especially one that seems uncannily similar to our family's semblance." Naruto shrugged lazily. "My parents were both renowned for their prowess in Fuinjutsu." Winter nodded, still examining the blonde. "So I was told. The art of sealing is definitely an extremely intriguing branch of skills. I'd be very much interested in discussing it with you in depth, and maybe even seeing if it's possible to combine your seals with our glyphs. Actually," Naruto started before gesturing to Weiss. "Me and Ice Queen have already created a few glyphs that borrow some symbols and such from my seals." Winter seemed genuinely interested now, so much so she seemed to skip over the blonde's nickname for her sister. "Well, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to see these new glyphs in action." With a simple gesture of her head, the eldest Schnee sibling had both Naruto and Weiss trailing after her, the former with a far more casual gait. Naruto looked back though when he noticed RWBY not following. "I'm just gonna stop off at the dorms real quick," the silver-eyed teen explained. With a smile and a wave, the red-slash-black-haired teen was off, Shrugging, Naruto moved to catch up with the two Shinii siblings. However, a flash of movement caught his eye. The blonde was surprised when he caught sight of an older man using his bare hands to quickly and silently dismantle a pair of Elysian knights in a blur of speed. If it wasn't for the nagging feeling of familiarity, the whiskered teen would have moved to attack the mysterious man. And while he had mercilessly decapitated the androids, the gray-haired man had ignored everyone else around him, making it clear that he had some sort of beef with Atlas specifically. The red cape-wearing man called out in a raspy baritone, "Hey!" When the two Shinii siblings, along with almost the entire courtyard of meandering students, turned their gaze to him, the man continued with a sarcastic grin. "Yeah, I'm talking to you, Ice Queen." Naruto had to use all of his willpower to not fall over in laughter. Whoever this man was, the former shinobi could already tell that they'd get along just fine. Weiss, being herself, marched right up to the man and jabbed him in the chest with a finger. "Do you have any idea who you're talking to?" The man, clearly drunk, covered up the Shinii heiress' face, shushed her, and shoved her to the side. "Sure. Not you." Straightening up, the man stared down Winter from across the courtyard, a frown stretching across his face. "You." The onlookers watched with bated breath, the tension palpable as the two stared each other down with a steely look to their eyes. Already, Naruto could hear the mutterings of the crowd as they tried to figure out what was going on. After all, it wasn't exactly the smartest choice to openly go against another kingdom so boldly. "Saw that gaudy ship of yours in town, guess you're here too," the still unnamed man continued. "I'm standing right before you," Winter snarkily replied. Squinting, the man leaned forward, seemingly trying to verify Winter's claim. "So it would seem." Naruto had to hand it to the man. He was really playing up the whole incapable drunk guy routine. Had he been anyone else, the half-blood Uzumaki may well have fallen for it like everyone else seemed to. But making your opponents believe that you were far less capable than you actually were was what had gained Naruto his moniker of most surprising shinobi. That and knowing people like Kaka-sensei, Ero-sennin, and Bushy Brows, each of whom had used the same tactic in their own way, made you intimately acquainted with a person's tells. Looking closely, Naruto could see that the man was clearly prepared to react to anything as quickly as possible. His muscles were tense, his eyes would flicker every few seconds, and his hand never strayed too far from the weapon he kept strapped to his lower back. "This is gonna be interesting to watch," Naruto mentally concluded. Winter sneered. "You do realize you've just destroyed Atlas military property?" "Oh, I'm sorry," the red-eyed man began in an over-the-top manner. "See, I mistook this for some sort of sentient garbage." Clearly fed up with the man's antics, Winter snapped. "I don't have time for your immature games, Crow." Hearing the man's name, Naruto did a double take, a picture of the silver-haired sensei of Team 7 flashing through his mind. "You two know each other?" Weiss asked her sister. Crow simply rolled his eyes. "Geez, you Atlas specialists think you're so special, don't you?" Winter was clearly growing even more frustrated with each second. "It's in the title." "Well, you know what you really are?" Crow asked rhetorically. "A bunch of rats, just like your boss." That seemed to really set Winter off, her face now contorted into one of rage instead of irritation. "I'm not sure what you think you're implying, but I've heard enough." Crow frowned. "Oh, I've heard too. I heard that old Ironwood finally turned his back on Ashbin and tried to rat him out to the council." By now, Naruto, like everyone around them, was extremely interested in the conversation. Sure, he had his own rather negative opinions regarding Atlas General and Headmaster, due in no small part to their less than stellar past interactions, but even the blonde was shocked to hear that Ironwood would stoop so low as to try and sell out his supposed friend. Naruto clenched a fist, remembering the few stories Jiraiya had told him of the relationship between the Sandaime and his old teammate, Danzo. The old Warhawk had outright went against the third on almost every matter that concerned Konoha, going so far as to go behind Hiruzen's back and do what he considered necessary to make Konoha great again. How the man had never been executed for outright treason was a mystery to the Jinchuriki. Still, the parallels between the two relationships was far too similar for Naruto's liking. However, while the onlookers were very much so curious, Winter was anything but. Unsheathing the rapier at her side, Winter brandished the weapon as she practically snarled, "If you won't hold your tongue, I will gladly remove it for you." Crow grinned cockily as he raked a hand through his hair. "All right then. Come take it." In a burst of speed that surprised even Naruto, Winter closed the gap between them and made to stab the gray-haired huntsman. Crow, still grinning, simply leaned to the side, narrowly dodging the strike. With the same lackadaisical and cockily casual attitude, the caped huntsman continued to dodge Winter's flurry of jabs and swings, growing even more frustrated with the man. Winter briefly abandoned her usual grace and poise in favor of reckless overhead strike. Crow simply bowed, allowing the blade of Winter's rapier to meet the broadside of his own sword. Using her surprise to his advantage, the red-eyed man grabbed the handle of his sword and easily pushed her back, twirling it with practiced ease. Hefting the large sword out in front of him with one hand, Crow grinned wolfishly as he tapped his sword against Winter's. Apparently that was all the invitation she needed to get serious. Without any more sort of preamble, the two were flashing across the courtyard. Sparks and brief blasts of air echoing after each clash. Having never seen a fully trained huntsman in live combat, Naruto couldn't help himself as he eagerly watched the two literally tear up their surroundings. While it looked like some of the other students were very much so struggling to keep up with the unreal to them speeds the two were displaying, Naruto was having no trouble at all. Heck, to him, this was what was normal. Think I can get either of them to spar with me? Naruto asked with a feral grin. With a yawn, Kurama replied, it would be one of the first times you wouldn't have to hold yourself back all that much. Pira has been getting better though. I usually have to resort to some stronger jutsu to bring her down, Naruto added. Kurama cracked an eye open, lazily watching as the still fighting Winter and Crow took their fight to the top of the courtyard's arches. True. She and the others have all improved by leaps and bounds, but these two are veterans. They've each seen and been involved directly with combat where one wrong move means death. They are far more like the shinobi of our time. The two living remnants of the shinobi era were torn from their conversation when RWBY joined them. Whoa! What's going on here? No clue, Weiss answered. Some crazy person started insulting General Ironwood, and then started a fight with my sister. Oh no! Who dash? RWBY's eyes widened as she apparently realized just who said crazy person was. That is my uncle! Kick her butt, Uncle Crow! Naruto took a quick glance at Crow, then back to his fellow captain before nodding. Well, that explains a lot actually. His comment went ignored as Weiss huffed before shouting. Teach him respect, Winter! Naruto casually crossed his arms behind his head as he watched Winter jump out from her shroud of smoke armed with two blades now, the second one a much smaller rapier held in her other hand. Crow seemed to have expected this, bringing up his own large blade to block the strike. However, Winter's somewhat petite and regal appearance did a very good job of hiding her strength, as she was easily able to barrel through the older huntsman's guard as well as the thick stone pillar he was stood on. With a resounding explosion, the two slammed into the courtyard with enough force to send chunks of stone flying. Still, this didn't stop either of the two fighters, both of them already up and exchanging blows before the dust had even settled. More and more Naruto was itching to join in as he watched the two. They haven't even used their semblance or anything yet. This is all just them, the blonde prattled. Kurama huffed, not true. The red-eyed one has been using his semblance the entire time. That seemed odd to Naruto. From what he had seen so far, almost every semblance had a very pronounced tell, a sort of sign that made it obvious that someone was using their semblance. Hell, even with as sneaky as she was about it, Naruto had spotted Pira's tell. Already knowing what his container was thinking, the chakra beast elaborated, I don't know exactly what it is or even what it does. To be honest, the only reason I noticed anything was because of my ability to sense negativity. Even then, he isn't putting off any negative emotions himself. It's almost like some sort of aura around him. Taking a moment, Naruto briefly entered Sage mode to enhance his own sensing abilities. Focusing on RWBY's uncle, the blonde Uzumaki furrowed his brow, as he too felt what his fuzzy tenant was talking about. While he couldn't exactly put his finger on it, he could tell that there was indeed something there. To his and Kurama's surprise, whatever it was suddenly acted out, lashing out at the ground under Winter's feet. To their further shock, they watched as a small crack in the ground fractured just a little more, opening enough to catch the elder Shini's heel, causing her to stumble. To her credit, Winter quickly righted herself just in time to avoid Crow's swing. The hell was that? Naruto bluntly asked. I do not know, Kurama replied, clearly just as confused as his container. Before either could really ponder what they had just seen, Winter used her two blades to parry a strike from Crow. With a cry of effort, Weiss' older sibling pushed back and sent RWBY's uncle skidding across the courtyard. Stabbing his sword into the ground, Crow managed to stop himself from sliding too far. However, Naruto's eyes instantly flickered back to Winter as a glyph came to life under her. To his shock, a flock of small, white nevermore emerged from the glowing circle of runes. The ethereal grim copies briefly circled the Schnee before flying at a still recovering crow. Did she just summon? Naruto mentally bellowed, having to hold himself back from running over and examining the glyph under Winter. Kurama peered at the fake grim for a moment, watching as Crow was battered by them before commenting, "It seems to be some bastardized version of a summon and clone jutsu." Without a closer look though, it's hard to exactly say what this is. Naruto tore his gaze from the eldest Schnee when he saw Crow's face stretch into a frown. Hefting his large blade up, the red-eyed huntsman swung downwards. What followed had even Naruto surprised. Winter's eyes widened as she hastily dodged to the side, canceling her glyph just in time to dodge a pure white crescent that flew past her and destroyed the nearby fountain, spraying water and rubble everywhere. For a moment, the two veteran warriors stared the other down. Despite the havoc they had wrought on the courtyard, either seemed all that winded. If anything, it seemed like that they had only just begun to warm up. This of course excited Naruto to no end. Winter's next move only brought a bigger grin to his face. Still crouched from her dodge, Winter's face slowly morphed into one of pure concentration as a large glyph array blossomed directly behind her. This was apparently Crow's cue to get serious as well, the caped man grabbing the trigger of his sword. Naruto quirked a brow as the gears and cogs that made up the sword's hilt began to spin and whir. The blonde brow ascended even higher as the apparently segmented blade began to expand while also curving back towards its wielder. Before the blade could finish whatever it was doing, Crow seemed to do a complete 180, putting away his weapon and regaining that same casual cocky attitude he had at the beginning of their skirmish. This confused Winter as much as it did everyone else. However, any thought she may have given to canceling her own attack was thrown out the window when Crow taunted her with a "bring it" gesture. Snarling, Winter let out a war cry as she literally glided across the ground, her main rapier aimed straight for Crow's throat. "Schnee!" The harsh bark of General Ironwood caught everyone by surprise, none more so than Winter, who quickly stopped her attack, her weapon mere centimeters from a still grinning Crow's neck. Quickly composing herself, the elder Schnee sibling turned on her heel with a salute. "General Ironwood, sir!" An irate-looking Ironwood ground out. "What in the world do you think you're doing?" Clearly, caught off guard by her superior's sudden appearance, Winter stammered out. "He started the altercation, sir!" Crow threw his hands behind his head and rolled his eyes. "That's actually not true, she attacked first." A deep frown crossing his face, the Atlesian general turned to his soldier and asked, "Is that right?" Winter, knowing she couldn't lie to her leader, simply hung her head without saying a word. Ironwood's frown somehow deepened as he looked at the state of Beacon's courtyard as well as the stunned and unsure faces of the various students who had witnessed the fight. Turning his gaze to Crow, who was attempting to whistle, the general ground out, "And you?" Walking closer to the red-caped huntsman, the Atlesian headmaster continued in a whisper Naruto barely caught. "What are you doing here?" While Winter seemed to have been cowed by the intimidating general, Crow seemed to not give a damn. "I could be asking you the same thing." This seemed to catch Ironwood off guard. Now everyone," a familiar voice interrupted. "There is a sanctioned fight happening just around the corner at the Coliseum, and I can assure you they have better seats and popcorn." Naruto's sweat dropped at the oddness that was Beacon's headmaster. Glinda, far less subtle in her mannerisms, called out, "All right everyone, break it up! We'll take care of this mess." In an attempt to regain some face, Ironwood tugged at his collar before ordering his men, "Let's go." While the Atlesian forces began to walk off, Ruby was quick to latch herself onto her uncle, screaming out, "Uncle Crow!" Literally hanging off of Crow's outstretched arm, the young teen rambled, "It's so good to see you! Did you miss me? Did you miss me?" With a smirk, the older huntsman answered, "Nope." The following affectionate head rubbing made it clear though that the man had indeed missed his niece. Seeing the two interacting, Naruto smiled. It was clear as day that the two shared a close relationship, which very much so explained where Ruby got a lot of her mannerisms and even sense of style. But it was also nice to be reminded that, even though Ruby had been bumped up a year and made a team captain, she could still act her age. "Oh!" Ruby exclaimed, the proverbial light bulb going off in her head. "Uncle Crow, I'd like you to meet Naruto." The older man sized up the blonde-haired teen with a raised brow, somewhat caught off guard with how much the blue-eyed teen resembled his other niece and brother-in-law. Not taking his eyes off the teen, Crow not so discreetly whispered to his niece, "Is it just me or does the kid look a lot like Dad and Yang?" Ruby finished with a giggle. I think it's the hair and whiskers. Naruto sighed. You know I can hear you guys just fine, right? The two scythe wielders shared a look before chuckling. Nice to meet you, kid. Name's Crow, the red-eyed huntsman stated with an outstretched hand. Naruto grinned and took the offered hand. Uzumaki Naruto. Crow! Ajpin interrupted. A word, please. Seeing the less than pleased look on his boss' face, Crow grimaced. I think I'm in trouble. Gee, I wonder why. Naruto sarcastically answered. Hey, you know, kid, we might just get along. I'll catch you both later. The raven-haired swordsman finished, bumping fists with his niece before nodding at Naruto. And suddenly your recklessness makes sense. Weiss interjected as she walked up to the two captains. Ruby disregarded the thinly veiled insult and nudged her partner in the side. You're just mad he kicked your sister's butt. The Shinii heiress huffed. That was a draw at best, right, Naruto? The two turned expecting to see the whiskered captain only to find the spot where he was standing empty. What were you thinking? Winter demanded. If you were one of my men, I'd have you shot, Ironwood declared. Crow, exiting the elevator alongside Glinda and Ajpin, rolled his eyes. PFT, if I was one of your men, I'd shoot myself. Sighing and already feeling a migraine coming on, Glinda added. While I wouldn't condone his actions, retaliating the way you did certainly didn't help the situation. He was drunk, Winter rebutted. He's always drunk. Feeling the 4 sets of eyes boring into him, Crow decided that it may be in his best interest to put away his flask of whiskey. Really hope that Ruby doesn't pick up that habit from him. Please, the girl can probably handle her liquor as well as that bull-haired nutcase, Kurama groused. Hey! Drunk Lee needed the entire Konoha 11 and our senseis to hold him down, and that was after a sip of sake. Naruto exclaimed. Kurama rolled his eyes. My point still stands. Naruto huffed through their shared connection. Whatever. I still say this is a bad idea, though. You are a shinobi first, espionage and getting into places you shouldn't be are what you were trained for. Now shush. An exasperated Kurama pointed out. The two tuned back into the conversation happening below them in time to hear Ironwood, excuse, Winter from the room. Your little infiltrator isn't just another pawn, they're the one responsible for Autumn's condition. Crow explained. This seemed to catch the room's occupants by surprise, Glinda being the one to actually vocalize it. What? Crow took a swig from his flask. Despite what the world thinks, we're not just teachers or generals or headmasters. The people in this room? The leaders of the other 2 academies? We're the ones who keep the world safe from the evils no one even knows about. Turning a heated glare to Ironwood and marching up to the man, Crow continued. It's why we meet behind closed doors, why we work in the shadows. So you tell me, James, when you brought your army to Vale, did you think you were being discreet or did you just not give a damn? Even, hidden, Naruto could feel the tension in the room as the Atlesian general met Crow's irate stare. Seconds ticked by before Ironwood shook his head and pulled out his scroll, placing it on Ajpin's desk. Almost instantly a hologram of Vale surrounded by Atlesian airships flickered to life in the middle of the room. Discreet wasn't working. Gesturing to the hologram, the general continued. I'm here because this is what was necessary. Naruto mentally scoffed. You're here because Ajpin wanted you here. Crow spat. He made you a part of this inner circle and opened your eyes to the real fight that's in front of us. And I am grateful. Ironwood interrupted. Again, Naruto couldn't help but to scoff, which Crow unknowingly mirrored. Oh, well, you've got a real funny way of showing it. Ironwood frowned at the jab, but continued. The people of Vale needed someone to protect them, someone who would act. Naruto narrowed his eyes as the general visibly puffed up in pride. When they look to the sky and see my fleet, they feel safe and our enemies will feel our strength. A moment passed as the room took in the sheer bravado Ironwood had just spoke with, though Crow apparently only found this amusing as he chuckled and shook his head. You think they're scared of your little ships? I've been out there and seen the things she's made and let me tell you, they are fear. That little tidbit caught both Naruto and Kurama's interest. You don't think he's talking about Kagaya, do you? As Ajpin finally deigned a time to throw in his own 2 cents, Kurama shook his head. Hard to say. Kagaya was said to be just as capable of creating matter, and even life, as her 2 sons. Going off of what Tusama said, that thing she made, Zetsu or whatever, was what orchestrated her resurrection, so it wouldn't be too far-fetched to believe that she is responsible for the Grimm. Naruto frowned. From what we learned about the Grimm from that crazy bastard, Dr. Merlot, they are scarily similar to you and your brothers and sisters. Kurama sighed. At this point, the smartest plan would be to assume that Kaguya is the one responsible for all of this and proceed with that in mind, like we have been doing. We cannot let her get the drop on us, as she is more than likely looking for us so that she can resume her full strength, and that is something we can't let happen. So more sitting and waiting, huh? Naruto groused. Knowing how impatient his container was, the nine-tailed Biju simply rolled his eyes, yes and no. We will be waiting but not just sitting around doing nothing. As it is, we've gotten extremely close to perfecting that, and have already seen it benefit us even in our base forms. We are only going to get that much stronger from here on out. You know, Mr. Uzumaki, most would consider eavesdropping on our conversation to be a punishable offense. Naruto's eyes widened as Ashpin moved his gaze to the ceiling, brown eyes pointedly staring at the exact spot the blonde was hidden. Seeing as it was now just the two of them, Naruto dispelled the Maiseigaku Jutsu, hiding with camouflage technique, released the chakra that held him to the ceiling, and allowed himself to fall to the floor. How'd you know I was there, Professor? Ashpin took a sip from his mug. I have my ways. Knowing he wasn't going to get much else out of the enigmatic headmaster, Naruto shook his head. So how much trouble am I in? The silver-haired headmaster seemed to ponder the matter for a few seconds before a gleam struck his eyes. Slowly a small, almost imperceptible, smirk came across Ashpin's face. Mr. Uzumaki, what's your favorite fairy tale? Naruto? The blonde shook himself from the reverie he had wandered into. Sorry, what's up, Pira-chan? Naruto chuckled. The redhead took a moment to send her boyfriend a concerned look. Seeing the reassuring grin on his face, Pira shook her head before asking. I was wondering what you think of the match. Switching his gaze to the field below, the former shinobi watched as the hulking member of Team Jess used his equally massive staff to meet the blade of Team SSSN's dark-skinned member. Watching the concussive blast of air that came from the pair's clash, Naruto was slightly impressed. Turning to see the swashbuckling members of the teams battling it out on the mast of a wrecked ship, Naruto again had to admit that they were good. As he continued to watch the match, the blue-eyed captain finally replied, Team SSSN is good, but Team Just has got this in the bag. Really? They seem pretty evenly matched to me. RWBY added. Naruto shrugged. Neither team looks to be taking this too seriously, but underneath that, those Just guys are actually doing it on purpose. They're trying not to show off what they can do this early. On the other hand, Team SSSN is literally just not taking this too seriously. Cupping her chin, Yang suddenly piped up. Hey Blake? Isn't that monkey guy the same guy who winked Ash, Yang? Shut up. The raven-haired fauness ground out. Looking like the cat who caught the canary, Yang poked her partner. Still holding out for another blonde Ash, Yang? Said Blonde simply giggled to herself as Blake tried her hardest to control the blush on her face. And like that, Team SSSN is down a member, Professor Port bellowed out. By the way, have you guys decided on who you're sending to the doubles? RWBY inquired, keeping his eyes on the match. Naruto replied. You gotta ask? We're sending the Lovebirds, of course. Nora cheered. Aforementioned couple chuckled, already used to Nora's antics. I guess that makes sense, seeing as how you two are the most versatile out of your team. Weiss agreed. I think it's because they wouldn't let Nora participate after she pretty much destroyed the arena. Yang snickered. I still say that was totally unfair, Nora pouted. Ren chuckled as he patted his partner on the back. I'm confident Naruto and Pira will represent us well in the doubles. Like anyone will really cause either of them an issue. Blake pointed out. Yang bumped her fists together. I don't know, I think me and Weiss could pull it off. Seeing as how he is now pretty familiar with my glyphs, we'd be at a severe disadvantage. Weiss complained. Slinging an arm around her fellow blonde, Yang attempted to goad him on. Bah, forget them. You and me, Whiskers, mano y mano. Naruto rolled his eyes. When we do get sent to the singles round, I won't be the one going. It would be unfair to everyone else if you went on, RWBY admitted. Like it's any more fair if Pira the invincible girl Nikos goes on, Weiss pointed out. With a strong combo from Trey and Aizen of Team Jest, Scarlet has been defeated by aura depletion. Naruto almost felt bad for the red-haired member of Team SSSN. He had managed to go toe-to-toe with Trey for a good long while, exchanging a fair amount of blows. But with Aizen taking out Sage relatively easily, the hulking teen was free to pair up with any one of his other teammates. Caught unawares, Scarlet could do nothing as he was pinned between Trey and Aizen. That just made the situation all the worse for the remaining members of SSS and .as it was. The blue-haired teen was struggling to find Jest's sniper, let alone fight him. Then there was the two captains duking it out. While he had said that Jest was actually taking the fight more seriously than their opponents, Naruto had mentally omitted their captain. The guy had worn a smug, almost twisted, grin the entire time, easily goading his monkey-tailed opponent into slipping up every chance he got. Seeing the now free Trey and Aizen heading to back up their teammates, Naruto mentally called the match. With a double knockout, Team Jest has earned their spot in the doubles round, Professor Oblek announced. Ladies and gentlemen, that will conclude the 4-on-4 portion of this fine tournament. Tomorrow, we move on to the 2-on-2 rounds. The crowd roared with applause and cheers. Naruto and Pira shared a look. They were ready. From the arena below, a triumphant Jester spotted the two, his grin growing even wider. We're coming for you, Pira Nikos and Naruto Uzumaki. Just you wait. Chapter 35. Naruto sat with his arms crossed and an uncharacteristic frown on his face, his normally warm, electric blue eyes now like frosty glaciers. While he had so far enjoyed the Vital Festival and the tournament itself, this particular matchup had instantly soured his mood and served as a harsh reminder of the things going on behind the scenes of it all. Coco Adele and Yatsuhashi Daichi of Team CFVY versus Emerald Citri and Mercury Black of Team C-Many. As soon as the random selector had landed on the four names, Naruto instantly knew something wasn't right. There was no way that this was just pure happenstance. Team CFVY, one of the more popular teams and a crowd favorite, being matched against Cinder's henchmen? Even as oblivious as he was, Naruto could smell the foul play from his seat. If he was being honest though, the matchup itself wasn't even what he was really upset about. While he was worried for the well-being of his friends, he knew that both Coco and Yatsuhashi were formidable fighters and could handle themselves well enough. What was really eating at him was that, despite all of his training and growth these last 2 years, he was left sitting on his ass with his hands tied. It was like going back to the day of the Chunin exams with his current knowledge, only to watch it all go down the same. It was a bitter pill to swallow. Remember, thanks to that silver-haired headmaster, we are now even more prepared for what is to come. We now have the element of surprise, use it to our advantage, Kurama intoned. Shifting in his seat as he watched Coco literally mow down part of the battlefield with her Gatling gun, Naruto mentally nodded, true. Still hard to believe that there are apparently 4 super-powered women wandering around though. Really? An incredulous Kurama questioned. You met a lingering shard of the man who literally created the moon as a prison for his mother-turned-wrathful god, and 4 women with the power of chakra still being around surprises you. Naruto's sweat dropped. Fair point. But we still don't know if what these maidens use is chakra. It really could be some kind of magic or something. The powerful chakra being rolled his eyes, they can wield the very elements like a weapon, and their power is then passed down to another container when they die. Sound familiar? I will admit that it does sound pretty similar to the whole transmigrant thing Rikudajiji talked about, but could there really be people out there who still use chakra? Naruto replied. Kurama took a moment to collect his thoughts, ruby red eyes absently watching as Mercury began to easily combat both Coco and Yatsuhashi. Honestly, it was harder for me to believe that chakra as a whole had disappeared. Tusama and his brother spread chakra far and wide, through both the teachings of Nishu as well as through their own bloodlines. For it to just simply not exist, even after millennia, seemed off to me. Energy, especially energy as potent as chakra, cannot simply disappear. It has to go somewhere. Seeing the point his partner was making, Naruto hummed in thought, so from what we've figured out, chakra now exists in 2 different forms. A huge chunk of it has been turned into dust. The rest has stayed with both humans and faunus, but for some reason, people seem unable to combine its 2 aspects the same way we were able to. Because of the inability to unite yin and yang, they've learned to use each aspect on its own, giving rise to what they call their aura and semblance. However, they have also managed to make some form of bastardized elemental ninjutsu by igniting dust. Wincing as he watched Yatsuhashi take a boot to the face, Naruto continued, but these maidens are apparently the exception. From what Ashbin told us, they could very well be the only other people capable of using chakra the same way the people of our time did. Though that begs the question, who was the old man who gave them that power in the first place? Kurama pondered. Naruto shook his head as he watched Coco try to track Emerald through the thick forestry. Coco was not exactly suited for guerrilla warfare or stealth tactics. Her weapon was a sign of that. She was a front-lines fighter, period. Emerald was a different story. She was apparently extremely capable of getting around the treetops with little trouble. It almost reminded him of how most Konoha-trained shinobi fought. Could it have been Rikudajiji? I mean, you did say he was so powerful that he could continue to live on despite his physical body dying. Or it could have been another fragment of him like the one we met in the cave, Naruto finally answered. Kurama hummed and thought, it wouldn't be too far of a stretch for that to be the case. Before Kurama could expand any further though, Naruto's attention was drawn back to the field below. The heck's going on with Koko? The blonde muttered to himself. The whiskered teen was deeply confused as he watched the older, mocha-haired teen begin to talk to herself. Unfortunately, due to the constant chatter of the massive crowd of spectators, the blonde couldn't make out what was being said. Thankfully, Naruto was somewhat adept at reading lips. One had to be with Kakashi as a sensei, and was able to make out Koko speaking her partner's name. From there, putting the pieces together was easy enough. Yatsuhashi never made it out of the geysers though. Why would she think he's... Unless Naruto's train of thought was quickly derailed as Emerald stealthily emerged from a tree behind an unaware Koko, weapon raised high. A flash of green followed. In a startling upset, Emerald and Mercury handily defeat Koko and Yatsuhashi. Professor Port bellowed. Gritting his teeth, Naruto shook his head. That was no defeat. Emerald and Mercury destroyed Koko and Yatsuhashi. It was calculated and damn near flawless, Kurama added. The kitsune narrowed its eyes, and feeling how disheartened the audience is, this fight's brutality served a bigger purpose. Having seen enough fights for the day and his mood now properly soured, Naruto rose from his seat and made for the exit. But for what purpose? What does she get out of any of this? What's the end goal here? If we go off of what she's told you, the end goal is to reveal the dark truth of how the headmasters and those in power conduct their business, no doubt ending in some sort of coup in an attempt to give the power back to the masses, Kurama answered, though it was clear in his voice that he didn't believe that to be the case. When Cinder had attempted to recruit him near a year ago and revealed her grand plan, Naruto had briefly entertained the idea that she was being completely honest. However, her subsequent actions threw that notion straight out the window. There was a much bigger game being played here, and although he was probably way more informed and in the know than the general populace, there was still way too much he didn't know. As a former shinobi and apprentice to a shinobi infamous for his expansive spy network, Naruto knew all too well just how valuable information was. "Piranikos, right?" said red-haired Huntress, quirked a brow before turning to see who had spoken to her. She was met with the sight of a teen dressed in a purple hoodie with 2 yellow stripes going down the right sleeve, the entire left sleeve a contrasting black. Over the left breast of the coat was also the laughing visage of a court jester colored in purple and yellow. With a candy cane casually dangling from his lips, the guy wasn't what most would call intimidating. However, the wide grin that met her stare instantly put her on edge. Something just seemed off about this guy. Not in the malicious way, just in a way that made her slightly uneasy around him. Yes, that would be me. Sorry, I don't seem to know your name though," Pira finally replied. Shifting the candy cane to the other side of his mouth, the purple/yellow-haired teen shrugged. "Not many people do. Though I think that's something you could sympathize with, isn't it, Ms. Invincible?" Frowning at the reminder of her status, something she had forgotten about after being surrounded by friends and a boyfriend who didn't care for it, Pira decided she wasn't exactly a fan of whoever this guy was. "Can I help you with something?" Pira finally replied, her tone making it clear she wasn't exactly keen on continuing the conversation any further. If the grinning teen picked up on the hint, he didn't show it. "Someone offering a potential opponent help? How very odd of you." The hooded teen chuckled. Pira was slightly confused at not only what had been said, but the way it had been said as well, her face expressing that pretty clearly. "A dash? Then again, we're outside of the ring, so I guess we technically wouldn't be considered enemies." The hooded teen pondered. Shrugging, he stretched out a hand. "In that case, Jester Asgard at your service." Pira warily looked at the offered limb before cautiously returning the gesture. "Piranikos." As she took his hand, Jester's grin grew large enough to practically split his face. "I look forward to facing you on the battlefield, Piranikos." Without another word, the hooded teen turned and began walking away with a hop to his step. Thoroughly creeped out by the entire interaction, Pira could only gaze at the retreating form of the teen with a confused frown on her face and an unsettling feeling in her gut. "Interesting. So with the addition of this symbol here, You amplified the explosive power of the glyph without needing to actually funnel any more aura into it, Winter observed. Leaning back in his seat, Naruto nodded. Funnily enough, I'd borrowed the symbol from the seal that I used to store my weapon. Winter hummed in thought. I assume then that this symbol acts as a directional propellant in the language of your seals? Naruto grinned. You got it! I would be very interested to learn more about the language of this fuinjutsu of yours and see if it could possibly translate to our family's glyphs. Winter hinted. Fine by me. Naruto shrugged. Seeing the eager gleam in the elder Shin's eyes, the blue-eyed captain grinned as he continued. As long as you show me that summoning glyph you used in your fight with Crow. Realizing she had just been baited, Winter couldn't help but smirk and admire the teen's cunning. Though she had to admit that she was also curious to know just how the blonde teen was so easily able to identify what she had done. Is this how the others feel when they see me and him talking about this stuff? Because now I get why they say it looks weird, Weiss mentally gawped. For all of her life, the Shin heiress had seen her sister as the living definition of cold and impersonable. Sure, there were times where Weiss got to see what little remained of her sister's caring human side, but she had never seen Winter so animated. The young heiress was torn from her thoughts when Naruto rose from his seat and stretched out his arms. Well, you two have fun, but I gotta work with Pyrrha on some training for the doubles rounds. See ya! With a casual wave, the blue-eyed captain waltzed out of the gazebo the three had been sat in for the past hour or so. Taking a sip from her cup of tea, Winter turned her attention to her younger sister, a small grin and a gleam in her eye. After a few moments of this, Weiss finally caved and asked, Why are you looking at me like that? I can definitely see why you're infatuated with him, Winter calmly remarked. Weiss' jaw hit the floor. What? Winter quirked one of her delicate brows as she took in the shock on her sister's face. The few times we talked or messaged each other, you tended to mention him at one point or another. I simply figured that you had a crush on him. No! I would never fall for an idiot like him! Weiss cried out as she flailed her arms wildly. Seeing her sister's incredulous face, the snow-haired heiress calmed down and explained. Besides, he's dating Pyrrha Nikos. Interesting. Winter hummed in thought. Well, romance aside, talking with Naruto about our summons reminds me, have you been working on yours? Weiss sighed and visibly sagged in her seat. This was going to be a long day, she just knew it. Welcome back to another day of the Vital Festival Tournament, Professor Port exclaimed over the PA system. His declaration was met by a thunderous roar of applause from the massive crowd of students and civilians. Today will be the last day of the doubles rounds, which will be followed by a day's break in preparation for the one-on-one rounds. Oblek continued. Again the crowd cheered. Without any further delay, let's spin the randomizer to see which two pairs will be starting off our fights for the day. Standing off to the side, both Naruto and Pyrrha watched as the screen rolled through the remaining combatants, the former donning a cocky grin while the latter put on a determined face. And we have Naruto Uzumaki and Pyrrha Nikos of Team NNPR. Seeing their faces pop up on the screen, the couple shared a brief look and nod before walking out to the field. Absent-mindedly twirling his shakujo, Naruto grinned. You ready to win this, Pyrrha-chan? Tightening up her ponytail, Pyrrha nodded. Definitely. And facing the power couple of Beacon will be Jester Asgard and Aizen Blitz from Shade Academy. Taking note of the sudden frown on his partner's face, Naruto asked. Something wrong? Before the redhead could answer, the captain of Team Jess called out. Well, would you look at that, Aizen? We get to fight Ms. Invincible and her boyfriend. Standing next to the purple-themed fighter stood his much taller and muscled teammate. Wearing a sleeveless forest green trench coat that matched the massive staff he held in his other hand, the dark-skinned teen cut an imposing figure. The scars that crisscrossed his arms and the visible parts of his chest added to his strong presence, as well as making it clear that he had seen his fair share of battle. Peering at his opponents with pale orange eyes, the silver-haired teen simply grunted. However, Naruto ignored the taller of the two, focusing on what Jester had said. With one sentence, the apparent captain of the team had made it pretty clear why Pyrrha wasn't exactly a fan of the guy. As the stage randomizer began to spin, Jester grinned. So how's it feel to be a trophy wife blondie? Naruto said nothing, but one could see his eye begin to twitch while Pyrrha's frown deepened. Wow, this guy's a jerk, Yang blandly commented. Riling up your opponents to make them slip up is a tried and true strategy for many, Ren interjected. Yeah, but it's probably not a great strategy when your opponents are Naruto and Pira, Blake argued. I'd be surprised if those two lasted more than a minute against Pira and the Dolt. Anyone ever tell you that you have a natural talent for insulting and complimenting someone at the same time? Yang chuckled. Humph. That's a yes and why speak. Ruby giggled. Anyone else feel sorry for these guys now? Nora piped up. Taking note of the two fields that the randomizer had chosen for the match, Yang winced. Yeesh. It's like someone hacked into the system and decided to give Naruto the win. The rest of the group couldn't help but agree. Naruto's trademark foxy grin sprung onto his face as a massive forest rose up behind the pair from vacuo. Knowing that a ruined cityscape had risen behind him and Pira only made him that much more confident. The urban jungle and a forest. Well, this is going to be interesting, Jester pointed out, his grin still plastered across his face. Combatants, are you ready? The two pairs gave a simple nod in reply, either tearing their gaze away from the other. Then without further ado, begin! Pira buzzsaw! Naruto called out, already gathering chakra around the head of his Shikujo. The redhead answered with a resolute. Got it! With a quick spin, Pira launched a ko with a grunt of effort, sending the bronze shield spinning through the air like a discus. Naruto followed behind his partner. Futon Rankuden, wind release, drilling air bullet. As the whiskered blonde swung his Shikujo, a visible and condensed ball of air shot from the tip. Before anyone could blink, the jutsu collided with a ko, turning the already deadly shield into a veritable saw blade. Aizen! The still grinning Jester called out. The taller teen grunted and stupidly, to many of the onlookers, stood directly in the path of a ko. To everyone, even Naruto and Pira's surprise, the teen simply brought up his hand and batted away the spinning shield as if it was merely a fly. Pira frowned. Not wanting to show off her semblance just yet, the redhead raced to collect her shield that was now embedded in a nearby building. No shield for you! Jester called out, appearing directly in Pira's path, a pair of oversized yellow hooks in hand. Twirling one by the chain that attached it to his back, the hooded teen sent the weapon flying straight for the approaching redhead. Seeing the incoming hook, Pira narrowed her eyes before bringing up Milo in its sword form. With a quick swing, the emerald-eyed teen swatted aside the offending weapon. As Jester moved to recall his weapon with a simple tug, he was shocked to feel some resistance. Looking up, his eyes widened when they met the smug grin of an airborne Naruto, yellow hook in hand. With a grunt of effort, Naruto twisted his body and tugged on the chain, pulling Jester from the ground and sending him flying into the forest. Before the whiskered teen could safely land, though, the second hook came flying out from the forest, the chain wrapping around his forearm. Shit! Was all Naruto could get out before he was pulled down into the thick foliage. Knowing that Naruto was now in his home turf, Pira continued on her path to recollect her shield. Right as she made it into the section of the arena that was littered with rubble and dilapidated buildings, she was blindsided by a flash of green and a tremendous war cry. Caught unawares, the redhead was sent crashing through several walls before landing in a dimly lit building, her side screaming in pain and a cloud of dust obscuring her view. Shakily getting back on her feet, Pira was forced to quickly roll to the side, narrowly avoiding a strike that turned a nearby wall into chunks. Still not able to see clearly due to the low light, and now even thicker veil of dust, Pira frowned as she realized her only way out would be to use her semblance. Taking a quick glance around, the redhead nodded her head. No one outside of here should be able to see this, and the cameras still haven't found us. And my opponent is in the same situation I am, so he won't realize what's happening either. Perfect. Gathering up her aura, Pira's arms were covered in a murky mix of grays and blacks as a near inaudible hum reverberated off the walls. Aizen, having lost sight of his opponent amidst the cloud and poor lighting, perked up when he heard the hum. Quickly swiveling his head around in an attempt to find the source, the bulky teen caught the glow of something dark to his side, though it was now too late. The staff wielder grunted and screwed his eyes shut as something literally pushed him out of the building, forcefully sending him through a wall and back out into the light of the arena. The hell was that? Gravity dust? No, her weapon isn't outfitted to handle that kind of cartridge, and I didn't see any on her. She clearly favors fire and earth dust, though I did see a single cartridge of lightning dust as well. Still, none of those could have possibly pushed me like that. Her semblance? She never used it in the 4-on-4 round, and none of her tournament fights show her using it. But what kind of semblance could that have been? As the silver-haired teen attempted to recollect his bearings and figure out just what he had been hit with, he was forced to quickly bring up his massive staff, blocking Pira's attempted slash. Using his superior strength, Aizen got to his feet and shoved his attacker away with a grunt. Pira moved quickly though, giving him no time to adjust. The taller teen could soon do nothing but stand there and dodge or block what few swings he could, but seeing as speed wasn't his forte, a large majority of Pira's attacks hit their mark. "It is not looking good for Mr. Blitz," Professor Port bellowed. "Indeed. It would seem that Ms. Nico's superior speed and agility has given her the upper hand in this bout," Oblek added. Naruto frowned from his spot hidden in the trees. Something wasn't right. After landing amidst the branches and leaves of the forest, he hadn't seen hide nor hair of his opponent. He could sure as hell sense the guy, but without going into sage mode, he couldn't pinpoint him. A sensor nin he was not. "Naruto!" Raising a brow, Naruto turned to see a familiar redhead walking around the forest floor, her signature shield and sword in hand. The blonde shook his head as a foxy grin spread across his face. "So that's the game he wants to play, huh?" As Pira walked almost aimlessly around the forest floor looking for her captain, she couldn't help but feel like she was being watched. It was unsettling and putting her on high alert. Being paranoid worked in her favor though, as she felt something move just behind her. Quickly jumping to the side, Pira barely avoided being slammed into by a massive yellow hook. Seeing the familiar weapon, the redhead turned and couldn't help but let her eyes grow wide. Standing before her was Jester, casually swinging one of his hooks by the chain. "Damn, didn't think I'd miss this time." "What?" Pira cried out. Quickly bringing up her shield, the redhead blocked another attempted attack. "Why so surprised? We're in a fight after all," Jester called out, twirling his hooks before sending the two weapons hurtling at his opponent. The emerald-eyed huntress to be rolled out of the way of the two weapons' reach. Getting back to her feet, she rushed her still grinning opponent, lashing out with a wild cross slash. Jester simply recalled one of the twin hook blades and used it to block the haphazard strike. "But you can't be you," Pira argued. Jester, easily holding back the redhead, suddenly looked confused. "What do you mean I can't be me?" Pira grunted angrily before disengaging from the sword lock. "You can't be you, because I am." To the shock of the audience, Pira's body began to change, her hair receding and changing colors while her clothing and weapons shifted to much darker tones. In the blink of an eye, Pira had changed into Jester, an angry frown on his face instead of his usual grin. The apparent Jester copy only laughed before a plume of thick white smoke obscured him from view. While he hadn't expected the cloud of smoke, Jester fully expected his opponent to use the cover to his advantage. He wasn't wrong. Sparks flew as Naruto's Chikuto blade was blocked by Jester's twin hooks. "You're gonna have to do way better than that if you want to fool the prank king," Naruto goaded. Struggling to hold off the much stronger blonde, Jester scoffed. "I'll show you who's prank king." Using his smaller frame to his advantage, the hooded teen disengaged from the sword lock and rolled away. As Naruto twisted around with a wide swing of his blade, Jester latched one of his weapons onto a nearby tree branch. With a simple tug, he was flying into the treetops, simultaneously avoiding Naruto's swing. Naruto wasn't about to let up though, easily leaping into the treetops after his opponent. While he had been prepared for any number of his opponent's possible attacks, he was not at all expecting to see a Beowulf waiting for him, crouched and poised to strike. Caught off guard by the sight of the grim, the whiskered teen grunted as he took a vicious claw swipe straight to the chest. Having endured far worse, the blonde Jinchuriki shrugged off the brief flash of pain, landing nimbly on the forest floor, weapons at the ready. "Banzai!" Jester cried out. Naruto blocked the attempted bull rush with his Shikujo. Before he could shove his opponent away though, Jester twisted his body and launched one of his hooks. As quickly as he had appeared, the hooded teen was gone. Naruto hissed in annoyance. "Gonna play this game?" Any sort of plans for a counterattack were quickly shelved though when the speeding form of a Borbotusk came rolling out of the forest. Grunting, Naruto blocked the spinning ball of black and white with both parts of High No Ishi in either hand. "Suetun, Mizurappa, water release, water trumpet!" The Borbotusk was violently slammed into a tree by the ensuing blast of water. As the hog-like Grim began to shift back into Jester, Naruto dismissed the clone that had cast the water jutsu. "Well, that's just not fair," Jester mocked as he collected himself. Naruto rolled his eyes. "Thank Kami I'm not that much of a smartass." The echoing bark of laughter from Kurama through their shared connection caused the half-blooded Uzumaki's eye to twitch. No, what else isn't fair? Without even giving Naruto any time to answer, feathers began to sprout across Jester's body. Realizing too late what was happening, the former Konoha shinobi cursed as a nevermore took to the skies above the tree line. Already figuring that the shape-shifting teen was more than likely going to help his teammate take on Pira, Naruto was off racing through the trees. Pira gave out a cry of effort as she lashed out with a vicious left kick, the strike landing square between her much larger opponent's ribs. Quickly swaying underneath a swipe from Aizen's large staff, the redhead put some space between herself and the taller teen. Lightly panting with a thin sheen of sweat covering her, Pira couldn't help but to mentally cry in frustration. I know that despite help from Naruto and Ren, hand-to-hand isn't my strong suit, but I'm not that bad. How is he still standing after all of this? How does he have enough aura to withstand all of the hits I've landed? True to the emerald-eyed teen's observation, Aizen stood just as tall and fresh-faced as he had been when the battle started. For all intents and purposes she may as well have been tickling him this whole time for all the good her attacks had done. My turn, the dark-skinned teen intoned. Pira tensed herself in preparation to dodge whatever her opponent had planned, deciding to let him do the attacking for now. However, as she felt cold steel coiling around her legs, she knew that she had played into her opponent's plan. Her eyes quickly tracing the chains back to their owner, Pira frowned, keeping track of the rushing Aizen out of the corner of her eyes. Actually, it's our turn, Jester quipped, keeping the chains taut. With a frown, she realized one of the only ways out of her predicament required the use of her semblance. Trying to be as discreet as possible, Pira pulsed her semblance around her legs with just enough force to slightly loosen the chain's grip. Right as Aizen was only feet from her, Pira jumped over the taller teen, slipping out of the chains with ease. Landing behind the bewildered teen, she proceeded to use her semblance once more to control the chains that had bound her, wrapping her silver-haired opponent with them. What? Jester cried out, everything having happened in the blink of an eye. Don't forget about me, Naruto called out. With chakra visibly covering his fist, the blonde came falling from a nearby building, landing a savage punch that sent the restrained Aizen flying. Having been forcibly attached to his teammate, Jester was pulled along for the ride. Naruto grinned as he watched the two crash through chunks of what used to be a building. The staff user is almost as tough as you, Pira commented as she caught her breath. The smiling one is quick and can shape-shift, Naruto replied. Sharing a look, the couple nodded at the other, a plan forming. The pile of rubble that had fallen atop Jester and Aizen exploded, the taller of the two standing with a grimace on his face while the shorter one was clearly more banged up. Before either of the two shade students could properly gather themselves, the power couple of Beacon was on them in a flash. Aizen was sent flying into yet another building by a harsh left kick from Naruto, the blonde chasing after him in the blink of an eye. Jester was meanwhile forced to throw himself to the ground, just barely dodging out of the way of a spinning Akko. Rolling to the side, he dodged Pira's follow-up jab. Still on the ground, Jester rolled past the redhead, hooking his weapon around the redhead's ankles. As she felt her feet being taken out from under her, Pira twisted her body around, a subtle use of her semblance allowing her feet to slip out of the grasp of the hooked blades. As she rose to her feet, Pira quickly brought up Akko, the shield blocking a claw swipe from a Beowulf. Shoving the offending arm aside, the redhead lashed out with a quick series of jabs from Milo. Dazed by the speed of the attacks, Jester was left wide open to Pira, then slamming Akko directly into his face. Geez, it's almost like Pira's got something personal to settle with this guy, Yang commented. She's definitely not going easy on him, Blake agreed. Watching as Jester finally regained some footing and began to go toe-to-toe with their red-haired teammate, Nora and Ren nodded, the latter adding, she's being a little more aggressive in this match. I mean, the guy did say some pretty rude stuff, RWBY supplied. She's also trying to keep her ace in the hole under wraps, so she's relying more heavily on just her weapons and technique, Kurama pointed out, comfortably situated on RWBY's lap. I don't doubt that if she was making full use of her semblance, she would have already decimated either of these two. Same can be said for the blonde doofus too, Weiss admitted. Still, those two from Shade are doing a pretty good job keeping up with Foxy and Pira so far, Yang noted. Seeing Jester actually manage to push Pira back by sliding into the form of a small Nevermore then into an Ursa in quick succession, Nora grinned. But Captain Whiskers and Pira are too badass to go down in this round. Aizen groaned as the speedy ball of sunshine that was Naruto landed yet another hit, this one thundering against his back. Despite the extremely durable shield of aura that normally coated him, the whiskered teen was hitting with enough strength that the dark-skinned teen actually felt each hit. While he wasn't by any means arrogant enough to believe his aura shields to be impenetrable, from experience, he knew that it took a lot for something to breach them. Bringing up his staff to block a strike from the blonde Shikujo, Aizen couldn't help but to let slip a curse as he felt himself being pushed back. How the hell is he doing this? I thought the hammer wielder was the muscle of their team. Naruto was meanwhile all smiles. Been a while since I've had to use chakra to pump up my hits. Still, he's taken quite a few and is still standing. Pira was right, guy is pretty damn durable. But let's see how he stands up against this. With a feral glint to his eyes, Naruto suddenly hopped away from his opponent, leaping into the nearby treetops. Aizen was given no respite though, 4 copies of the blonde emerging from the ground around him. The first rushed him, landing a solid punch straight across Aizen's jaw, dazing the silver-haired student. You dash! A second appeared behind the taller teen, donkey kicking him into the air. Zoo dash! The third clone used the previous copy as a springboard, launching itself into the air below Aizen. Twisting its body, the clone used Hai no Ishi as a bat, viciously slamming the staff into the airborne teen's exposed sternum. Ma dash! The fourth and final clone used the previous 2 clones to follow after his target, lashing out with a harsh spin kick. Ki! In far too much pain by this point to really be able to control his form in air, Aizen was forced to turn his eyes skyward as a shadow blocked out the sun. With his signature foxy grin plastered across his cheeks, Naruto came down upon his vulnerable opponent with a savage heel drop. Naruto Remnant! Aizen's subsequent crash back to the arena floor shook the ground, kicking up a thick cloud of dust and debris. Landing on his feet, Naruto grinned. Let's see you get back up from th-. Much to the shock of both the blonde former shinobi as well as the viewers, a silhouette could be seen emerging from the dust cloud. Haggard, no doubt bruised, and looking like he had just been thrown straight into a tornado, Aizen walked out of the crater he had made. Glancing at the board that displayed each fighter's aura levels, Naruto couldn't believe the guy still had enough to be just over the line of being disqualified. It was by the smallest of margins, but by all rights, the teen from Shade was still technically able to continue fighting. That was awesome! RWBY cheered. Foxy really let the big guy have it with that combo. Yang whistled in appreciation. Wonder if I could do something like that with my clones eventually? Blake pondered. While her semblance was eerily similar to the blonde's favorite jutsu, her clones were far more fragile and couldn't sustain themselves as long as the whiskered Jinchurikis could. Plus, Naruto could apparently summon them some distance away from himself. Her clones instead took up whatever space she had been occupying. Captain Whiskers could probably help you with it, Nora answered. Weiss nodded. He's helped me with my glyphs despite the small differences between them and his seals. He's also helped me relearn some facets of my semblance, Ren added. Knowing exactly what her longtime friend was talking about, Nora offered a small smile and squeezed his hand with her own. In turn, Ren smiled back at the hammer wielder, assuring her that he was okay. Think he could help me with mine? RWBY perked up with a smile. Ren shrugged. I think the only reason he was able to help Weiss, myself, and would possibly be able to help Blake, is because he has abilities that are pretty similar to ours. Wait, Nora interjected. Doesn't Captain Whiskers know that leaf swirl thing? Guys! Yang interrupted. Training talk later, that Aizen guy is getting back up. What? Panting, Jester grinned as he dodged another strike from his opponent and retaliated with one of his own. Guess you didn't earn the title of Invincible Girl for nothing, eh? Instantly a frown flashed across the redhead's face. Laughing to himself as Pira grew noticeably more frustrated with him, Jester quickly put some distance between the two. Before they could continue their bout, their eyes were drawn to the sky as Naruto appeared over Aizen. Uzumaki Rindan! The following quake put them on uneasy ground. Well, looks like our time is up, Ms. Invincible. Without a word more, the perpetually grinning teen from Shade shifted into a Nevermore once more and was off. Pira cursed under her breath before chasing after the black bird. Aizen! While his breaths came in short gasps as he collected himself, the teen from Shade looked up as his captain came falling out of the sky. Reaching a hand out, Aizen grabbed his captain, spun once and sent him hurling straight for Naruto. The hooded teen's flight was short-lived though as Pira rammed into him with a ko raised high. Seeing an opening, Naruto broke into a dead sprint with his target being the still recovering Aizen. However, as the blonde passed his partner and girlfriend, the two did something that caught everyone by complete surprise. Without even a word or a glance at the other, the couple seamlessly switched weapons, Pira taking high no Ishi while Naruto grabbed Milo. Aizen had to quickly bring up his weapon, barely blocking an overhead swing from the red and bronze weapon. Continuing to shock the viewers, Naruto backed off and switched Milo into its rifle mode, firing off a few quick successive shots. Knowing he couldn't give his opponent any room to breathe, the blue-eyed teen shifted Milo into its javelin form. With a quick dash to close the distance, Naruto jabbed Aizen straight in the solar plexus, robbing him of the air in his lungs. The following swing to his side from the extended spear sent the teen from vacuo tumbling. Aizen snarled as he rose to his feet, arcs of green static suddenly dancing around his entire body. Naruto's eyes widened as the teen suddenly appeared directly in front of him. Caught off guard by his opponent's sudden jump in speed, Naruto found himself bent over as Aizen's fist crashed into his abdomen. The following backhanded fist to the jaw sent Naruto tumbling end over end. Without even sparing the teen a glance, the now enraged Aizen turned his sights onto the redhead currently duking it out with his captain. "Crap!" Jester cursed as he narrowly dodged a downward stab from High no Ishi. With the amount of strength that Pira had swung with, the staff was embedded straight into the concrete floor. Instead of wasting time trying to remove it, the redhead grabbed the Shikujo's leather handled and tugged the hidden blade out. Without a hitch or a blink, the emerald-eyed girl batted aside one of Jester's hook blades with a kuo, quickly dashing into his guard following that. Jester could feel the rush of air across his face as he narrowly avoided Pira's sideswipe. Sparks flew as he hammered both of his weapons into a kuo in retaliation. Seeing his opponent simply shrug off the strike caused Jester to clench his teeth in frustration. Seeing as he wasn't going to outdo her in pure strength, the hooded teen jumped away to create some space so that he could gather the necessary momentum. That plan was quickly derailed though when Pira sent High no Ishi hurtling straight for him. Without missing a beat, the redhead then kicked out at the still stuck sheath/staff of High no Ishi. With a quick spin and a kick, the ebony piece of metal followed after its other half. Jester was so caught off guard by the fluid chain of actions that his hood was pulled down by the staff-turned projectile as it just barely missed him. To his luck, his teammate's sudden appearance right in front of Pira caused her to quickly distance herself, narrowly avoiding a strike from Aizen's staff that turned the spot where she had been standing into a crater. "Looks like Blondie pushed Aizen to use his semblance," Jester noted with an uncharacteristic frown. "If we need to, we can still push it a step further, but that would mean broadcasting our full potential to everyone here." Cursing, the teen from Vacuo watched as Naruto suddenly appeared with his fist covered in what looked like a blue flame. As the blonde's fist met the side of Aizen's ribcage, everyone winced as the sound of something cracking filled the air. "So I was right, your semblance powers you up, but at the cost of your aura shield," Naruto noted with a frown. The captain of Team NPR's point was only further proven as Aizen's aura meter went from being just over the line of safety, to far below it, being almost non-existent. As if to prove just how bad the situation was, the dark-skinned teen then dropped to the floor, unconscious. The sudden drop caught most off guard, RWBY hurriedly announcing the teen's loss via aura depletion. Jester shook his head with a rueful smile as both Naruto and Pira turned their eyes to him. Raising both his hands, the captain of Team Just calmly stated, "I forfeit." The decision came as no surprise to anyone watching. While the pair from Shade had fought admirably against the power couple from Beacon, it was clear that they were coming up on their last legs. Meanwhile, despite having suffered a few hits from both Jester and Aizen, Naruto looked like he had barely started to break a sweat. Pira looked a little worse for wear in comparison, but it was clear she also had quite a bit of fuel left in the tank. Not wanting to really push themselves to their absolute limit, Jester made the smart call. Besides, this didn't mean he couldn't ask for a rematch later. In fact, a full 4-on-4 with their two teams going all out sounded like one hell of a day to him. Naruto turned to look at Pira with a foxy grin, tossing her a cheesy thumbs up. "Looks like we made it to the finals." Pira relaxed her posture, offering a smile in return. "Looks like it." By both aura loss and forfeit, Naruto Uzumaki and Pira Nikos have earned themselves a spot in the finals. A well-earned victory indeed. The couple laughed as the audience erupted into thunderous applause. "And why did you wait this long to tell me of this development, Cinder?" "I apologize. I wanted to see if I could handle this on my own." foolish girl. The power of a Jinchuriki is not something to be trifled with so easily, as I am sure you are now aware of. Yes. I have felt the beast chakra. Enticing, isn't it? It made me feel small, weak, like I was a mere child. Of course it did. That is the chakra of the nine-tailed fox, no mere beast. The Biju are fearsome constructs, forces of nature unto themselves. Their creator made sure of that. What would you have me do then? We must alter our plans. We are dealing with not just a Jinchuriki, but Naruto Uzumaki. Through his veins flows the blood of gods among men. However, just like his forefathers, he too shall fall. I will make sure of this. Tell me what I must do,